Chapter 58. After fixing the crystal pillar that was on the verge of shattering, Tang En and Jack both let out a long sigh of relief. Damn it, I will never touch anything related to magic again. Jack kept shaking his wrist and swore. Useless, your hand froze when you're holding something. You have no future as a thief. Tang En expressed his dissatisfaction with Jack for scaring him just now. Damn it, you want to try holding it? Jack immediately jumped at the mention of embarrassing things. I can't be bothered with you. Tang En lifted his foot and walked into the passage behind the metal door. Hey, wait for me. Jack hurriedly wrapped his leather belt around his waist and chased after him. Behind the metal door was a spacious slope. The crystal at the top illuminated the reliefs on the bluestone walls on both sides. Jack was busy studying whether there were any traps, so Tang En could only look at these reliefs in boredom. The background of the reliefs was mostly at sea. The content was nothing more than warships shooting at each other and close combat boarding the ship. The result of the war was always the victory of the ship with the shape of an anchor. That anchor was the symbol of the Aston family. Oh, he really was a pirate. Looking at a relief sculpture of a warship in the shape of an anchor dragging a merchant ship back home, Tang En could not help but mutter to himself. Strange, there are no traps here. Jack frowned and said after studying for a while. Tang En rolled his eyes. You're a thief, aren't you? Isn't it good that there are no traps? It's not normal. These nobles are all like misers. They can't wait to lock up every single gold coin. Could it be that they are too trusting of the magic lock? Why do you care so much? Let's go, we don't have much time. It was no wonder that Tang En was so anxious. The gray-clothed man found 5 thieves to take care of the various secret passages in the castle. But at the same time, there was a problem. If one person failed, it would inevitably affect the others. The slope gradually slowed down. After walking for a few minutes, a dim arched passage appeared in front of them. After checking for a while and finding no problems, the two of them stepped into the passage without hesitation. Who knew that after taking a few steps, suddenly, rumble, their eyes lit up. Tang En and Jack turned around in shock, only to see that their path had been blocked by a stone door. Jack quickly rushed to the front of the stone door, looked around, and heaved a sigh of relief. This is a trapdoor. It's only used to seal the road. We just need to find the switch. Why are you dragging me? Following Tang En's finger, Jack turned his head and saw a big guy in heavy armor and holding a huge sword slowly standing up at the front of the passage. Hiss! When the big guy fully armed to the teeth stood up, Tang En sucked in a breath of cold air. It was like a mini-tank. This is... Jack looked as if he had seen a ghost. Boom, boom, boom. The big guy took 3 steps forward like thunder, and a low, muffled voice came out, password. Jack suddenly howled miserably. This is a mechanical puppet. God! Wasn't this thing supposed to be extinct? Which bastard dug it out? Mechanical puppet? What's that? Tang En asked in surprise. Password. The low, muffled voice came out again. There's no time to explain. Remember, don't take it head-on. If you can dodge, dodge. Jack said anxiously. Do I need you to tell me that? Looking at the huge sword that was as tall as a person, Tang En swallowed hard. If he took a hit from this thing, how could he survive? Password. Open sesame. You know the password? Jack looked at Tang En blankly. Password error. Determined as intruder. Attack. The mechanical puppet obviously couldn't understand Tang En's nonsensical prank, and slowly raised its heavy sword. Boom, boom, boom. The mechanical puppet that was as big as a tank took a few big steps and arrived in front of Tang En, and slashed down with its sword. Damn, why is it me? Tang En rolled to the side with endless resentment. Boom. A deep pit was suddenly formed on the smooth limestone floor. Chance. Tang En looked at the mechanical puppet that was half exposed in front of him and subconsciously raised his dagger. Where should I stab? The mechanical suit puppet took a step forward and swept its great sword horizontally. The depressed twain could only roll out once more. Ding, ding, ding. 3 half-moon blades bypassed the huge sword, passed through the iron mask, and accurately hit the mechanical puppet's crystal eyes. However, the half-moon blades were deflected. Damn, how do I fight this? The mechanical puppet didn't seem to feel anything, and continued to chase after Tang En with its huge sword. Ding, ding, ding. Jack's hand moved like the wind, and the darts hit the predetermined target from various angles. Knees, shoulders, armpits, neck. In just a short while, Jack tried all kinds of vital points. Naturally, there was no effect at all, and the mechanical puppet didn't even look at him. Obviously, its first target was Tang En, who answered the password wrong. Tang En also realized this problem at this time, and couldn't help but curse his bad luck. Damn, my mouth is cheap, think of a way, Jack. Tang En gloomily passed through the mechanical puppet's legs and avoided the head-on slash. I don't have any way, this thing hasn't appeared for almost 1,000 years, I've only heard of such a thing. Well, the mechanical puppet is more cumbersome, see if you can trip it and make it unable to get up. Trip? Aren't you kidding me? Tang En looked at the marionette's steel legs, which were as thick as pillars, and rubbed his nose gloomily. For the first time, Tang En felt that in the face of absolute power, everything was fleeting clouds. The mechanical puppet came and went with the same few moves, straight slashes, sweeping, downward slashes. It didn't need magic, nor did it need Do Chi, it was just a pure suppression of power, but it was this kind of crude attack method that made him unable to do anything. Fortunately, although the mechanical puppet was strong, its speed was not very fast, and Tang En didn't feel any pressure to dodge now. Arthur, lure it over here. Tang En turned his head and saw Jack making a simple tripping rope with a rope dart on the side of the open space. Boom! Tang En's figure suddenly flashed like a ghost, dodging the giant sword slash, directly cut in front of the mechanical puppet, and kicked its steel calf. Clang! With the help of the rebound, his figure shot out like an arrow. Damn! Tang En felt his right leg go numb, and he almost lost his consciousness. Boom, boom, boom. The mechanical puppet strode over. Fall! Jack shouted. Chi! The fixed rope dart was easily kicked off like a grass stalk, and wrapped around the mechanical puppet's thigh. F***CK. Twain covered his face. This was too F***king perverted. The mechanical puppet dragged the rope dart, and still ran straight towards Tang En. Damn, fall for me! Jack was furious, and he pounced, pulling the rope, and stood firmly with his legs. The mechanical puppet paused for a moment, and then, Aya! Jack was dragged forward involuntarily. He stumbled and was really in a sorry state. Let go! Tang En went straight for the mechanical puppet at this time. Within a range of 2 meters, the giant sword slashed down. Tang En's body suddenly stopped, as if there was no inertia, and stopped outside the slash range. The giant sword fell to the ground, and Tang En dragged a trail of afterimages, running along the broad and thick back of the sword to the mechanical puppet's arm. He shouted, "Rope dart!" Jack subconsciously threw the rope dart in his hand. Damn! Tang En tilted his head, and the rhombus-shaped dart slid past his ear. Can't you throw the other end of the rope over? My mistake, my mistake. Jack laughed and raised his hand. At this time, Tang En didn't care about settling the score with him, and reached out to grab the rope. His body jumped, and he dodged the giant palm. His toes tapped lightly, and his body, like a swimming dragon, circled around the giant arm 3 times and fixed the rope on it. At this time, one end of the rope dart was connected to the mechanical puppet's calf, and the other end was connected to the giant arm. After doing all this, Tang En jumped in front of the mechanical puppet. Seeing that the intruder was in front of it, the mechanical puppet naturally raised its heavy sword. Tuck! The rope dart was pulled taut, and the mechanical puppet's right calf was suddenly pulled up. Bang! The rope dart was pulled taut, and the mechanical puppet's huge body swayed. Boom! The mechanical puppet fell on its back on the limestone floor, and Tang En, who was standing at the side, only felt the ground shake. Done! Tang En and Jack couldn't help but high-five. The only force that could knock down this big guy was probably the mechanical puppet itself. Ka. What? Tang En and Jack looked in shock at the mechanical puppet that fell on the ground, and it actually slowly got up again. F***ck, are you trying to let me live? Boom. The mechanical puppet that stood up again took a step forward, and Tang En and Jack quickly retreated like birds startled by the twang of a bow. However, after this mechanical puppet took a step forward, it suddenly stood still. Intruder, attack! Password. Guard. Tang En and Jack looked at each other. What was going on? Self-destruct. Activating self-destruct 3. A low, muffled voice sounded, and the mechanical puppet suddenly trembled as if it was convulsing. 2. Some mist-like things were spurting out from the gaps of the armor. Self-destruct? Self-destruct. Run! Jack screamed, turned around, and sprinted. Seeing Jack's reaction, Tang En also turned around without hesitation. Activate quickly. Boom! A deafening explosion came from behind, and Tang En and Jack were directly knocked to the ground. Clang, 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 all kinds of iron bars, bearings, and other parts poured down like a storm, smashing everywhere. Tang En got up and looked at the parts all over the ground, confused. Why did it suddenly self-destruct? Ouch! Jack's luck was not very good. He was brushed by a piece of armor on his back. I was wondering why there were no traps. Magic locks, mechanical puppets. These nobles are F***king perverted. Following that, Jack told Twain about the mechanical marionette. About 1,000 years ago, the West Swamp continent was not like now, where two tigers were fighting each other. Instead, it was a chaotic war between various countries and nobles. War was a major driving force for the development of science and technology. Alchemy advanced by leaps and bounds at that time, reaching its peak. Alchemists created many killing machines for war, and mechanical puppets were one of them. Once these puppets, which did not need to sacrifice soldiers, were born, they were widely loved by ambitious people. The war escalated under the influence of various alchemy items, and finally, an all-out war broke out between various countries. There were no winners in this war. Every country suffered heavy casualties, and their populations plummeted to the lowest point in history. The people were full of complaints. The kings of various countries were finally afraid, and with the mediation of the Temple of Light, which had just risen at that time, the countries declared a truce. They also destroyed all kinds of alchemy items and alchemy books. The mechanical puppets, which were the main force of the battlefield, were naturally destroyed collectively. Alchemy seemed to have regressed to its primitive state. I don't know where the Austen family found this mechanical puppet, but this thing has been damaged for a long time, and there's no way to repair it. It must have hit something when it fell and exploded. Jack finally voiced out his opinion. Jack's judgment was mostly correct. As mentioned before, the Austen family was originally a pirate. This puppet was picked up when they were salvaging a sunken ship at the bottom of the sea. After a simple test and finding that it could still be used, Count Austen was overjoyed and placed it in this secret passage to guard it. Although the outer armor had been changed, it was still an antique, so after a fall it was decisively broken. Of course, this had nothing to do with Tang En and the rest. Jack found a valve at the end of the passage. After pulling it, the stone doors on both sides opened. 3,000 chapters. Tomorrow is the last day of the new book. Please bookmark and recommend. Chapter 59. The moment the stone door opened, Tang En and Jack unconsciously tensed up. Magical locks, mechanical puppets. Their vigilance towards this secret passage had risen to the extreme. The light was so bright that they couldn't help but cover their eyes. What appeared in front of them was a luxuriously decorated room. Green jadeite, red coral, and colorful diamonds were everywhere. Even the floor and walls were a dazzling gold. Jack cheered and rushed in. This was undoubtedly a scene that a thief would dream of. Tangan was also very excited. He touched his nose. As expected, this is Earl Orstan's taste. Naturally, everyone liked gold and white things, including nobles. However, most nobles cared about taste and background. For example, if you put calligraphy, paintings, and sculptures in the hall, that was called taste. However, if you put a chest of gold, you could only be called a country bumpkin. Earl Orston didn't want to be looked down upon, so he decorated the castle the same as other nobles. However, in this private space, he still changed into his favorite style. Jack had already forgotten his purpose for coming here. He took out a cloth bag to put things in. Clearly, he wanted to get everything in one go. Tang En hurriedly pulled the red-eyed Jack back. Let's find the account book first. Let's find the account book first. Account book? What account book? Jack was very confused. Tang En was speechless. Cough, cough. Professional habit, professional habit. Fortunately, Jack quickly came back to his senses and put down the cloth bag with an embarrassed smile. Although the room was spacious, there weren't many places to put things. Earl Orston wouldn't be so bored as to make another secret passage. Thus, the two rushed to the innermost wooden cabinet. They opened the top drawer. Whoosh! There were 5 rows of fist-sized pearls in a dazzling white light. Jack pulled out the drawer without hesitation and put it on the table. He was clearly going to pack it up and take it away. He opened the second drawer. There was a green book inside. Account book. Jack subconsciously shouted in surprise. Tang En rolled his eyes. Damn, can't you read? This is clearly the ocean tide mental cultivation method. Cough, cough. Jack's face turned red, and he quickly changed the topic. Ocean tide mental cultivation method? Isn't this the Aston family's advanced battle force mantra? Take it if you want. Tang En didn't care about this at all. He had long passed the best age to learn Do Chi and magic. Advanced level or not, it didn't matter to him. Moreover, now that he had the system's blood Chi, he naturally wouldn't learn this. Then I'll kindly accept it. Jack put the mental cultivation method into his bosom with a mischievous smile. At this time, Tang En opened the third drawer. A dagger shining with colorful light was lying inside. The body of the dagger was pitch black, with 3 sparkling diamonds inlaid on both sides. What a pity! Fancy! The two of them gave their professional evaluation of the dagger. Jack picked up the dagger and looked it over. He grinned and said, Prodigal, the entire dagger is made of black meteorite essence. But why did you inlay the diamond to blind the enemy during a sneak attack? Black meteorite essence was an extremely rare associated ore. A ton of black meteorite essence might not even produce a grain of black meteorite essence the size of a grain of rice. If it was made into a weapon, only a small amount would be needed to cut through gold and jade. If more was added, the effect would be the same, so Jack couldn't be blamed for giving it a prodigal evaluation. Moreover, a short weapon like a dagger was more often used for sneak attacks and assassinations. Inlaying this kind of shiny diamond was undoubtedly putting the cart before the horse. The gains didn't make up for the losses. This dagger was carefully placed in the drawer by Duke Aston, which meant that its value was indeed not low. If it appeared in an auction house, it might be sold for a sky-high price by the nobles. However, in the eyes of Tang En and Jack, an assassin and a thief, it was undoubtedly trash. Tang En bent down and pulled out the bottom drawer again. A stitched book appeared in front of the two of them. There was nothing written on the book. Tang En casually flipped it open. On a certain day, transport 300 sets of black iron heavy armor to the Blackbeard pirate. Fee 25,000 gold coins. On a certain day, transport 50 fox girls from the northern wilderness to Mingguang City. Fee 20,000 gold coins. On a certain day, transport 1,000 tons of grain flour to the northern wilderness tribes. Fee 500 war horses. Black accounts such as the trafficking of armor, human trafficking, secret communication with the enemy, and so on were numerous. From this, it seemed that Duke Aston was a complete smuggling tycoon. This should be it. Done. Tang En happily closed the book. 5 secret passages and 5 thieves. In the end, Tang En's temporary cameo was luckier. Wait a moment. Jack saw that he had found the book, and began to carry out his transportation plan. Boom. Jack had just picked up the drawer of pearls when he heard a faint loud explosion. The ground trembled slightly. This is... The two of them looked at each other and said at the same time, a magic lock? Such a loud explosion was undoubtedly a magic lock. It seemed that one of their peers had failed to crack it. Let's go. Tang En put the book into his pocket and ran out first. Sigh. Jack looked at the room full of treasures and stomped his foot. He threw the pearls and some random items into the cloth bag and ran after Tang En. In less than 10 seconds, the two of them rushed out of the secret passage in the study. At this time, they could faintly hear a commotion outside. The guards of the castle were activated. Wait! After Jack rushed out a few steps, he turned back and removed the magic lock. He wrapped it carefully with a cloth and carried it on his back. F***ck, you don't want to live anymore. Tang En saw Jack's actions and shouted in shock. What was the difference between carrying this thing and carrying a bomb? Let's do it. It might be useful at a critical moment. Time was tight, so Tang En couldn't say much. He opened the door and rushed out. In the night, the tilting tower in the southeast direction had become a broken tower. It was flashing with fire and emitting thick black smoke. With such power, there was no need to think about it to determine that their thief companion was dead meat. Who are you? Catch them. With a few random shouts, Tang En and the others bumped into a group of guards at the corner of the study. Random flower. Before the guards could react from the panic, they saw a beautiful blood-red flower blooming in front of them. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The blood-red flower was instantly shattered. The red sword aura suddenly exploded in the narrow space. People were thrown off their feet. Blood was like a fountain in the courtyard, splashing wantonly. What are you waiting for? Go. Jack looked at Tang En, whose black clothes turned into blood in the blink of an eye. He was shocked. The shouts of the guards just now had obviously attracted attention. When Tang En and Jack rushed out of the inner residence, they saw torches flickering everywhere. The sound of footsteps and shouts was close at hand. Fortunately, most of the guards were still in the front hall. They wouldn't be able to block them for a while. Run separately. Run separately. Ugh. The two looked at each other and smiled. They cupped their fists and each chose a direction to run in. At this time, the encirclement had not yet been completed. The two had a high chance of breaking through. Tang En and Jack, one was an assassin and the other was a thief. They were both experts in traveling alone at night. Running separately could disperse the encirclement of the guards and better utilize their own strength. Tang En chose the front hall. First, he had been here before and was more familiar with it. Second, although there were a large number of guards rushing over, as long as he broke through, he could blend in with the guests. Bowing to thank the readers Abyss Walker and Engstone for their tips. Qidian Chinese website welcomes readers to read. The latest, fastest, and most popular serialized works are all on Qidian Originals. Chapter 60. The lights in Austin Castle flickered, and the silhouettes of people hurried about like a lion that had just woken up and was hunting its prey. A group of guards quickly went around the circular arched door and saw someone who was also dressed as a guard searching for something in the shadows of the corner. When the guard saw the group, he raised his hand and pointed to the north. Quick, quick, the thief is heading towards the inner residence. Go. Brother, what are you doing here? The thief left something behind when he met our group and ran away. The others have already caught up. You guys should hurry over and help. I'll find the item and chase after you guys. Okay, let's go, brothers. Seeing the group of guards rushing in the direction pointed out, the guard let out a light sigh and raised his head to reveal an eye-catching aquiline nose. It was Tang En. Even though he had expected that the path to the front hall would be very difficult, Tang En still underestimated the strength of the guards in a noble's castle. He had already encountered at least a dozen small groups like the one he had just encountered. At first, Tang En relied on his super-fast speed and ruthless attacks to swiftly and violently break through 3 waves of guard. However, the small teams behind him were still rushing over, one after another. They could not break through, and there was no end to killing. Thus Tang En had an idea. He knocked out a guard and changed into his uniform. The darkness of the night allowed him to successfully sneak his way to the circular arched door where he had killed the northern wolfhound. The circular arched door was considered a junction between the front of the castle and the inner residence. If he could break through here, his chances of sneaking into the front hall would be much higher. Tang En did not dare to hesitate and quickly passed through the circular arched door. Unexpectedly, just as he stepped into the corridor behind him, "Hey, why are you coming to the front?" Quickly searched the back. A person who looked like a butler was standing at the end of the corridor, commanding the guards. When he looked up, he saw Tang En walking in the opposite direction. 3 lotus roots floating in the jade pond. How can a raft be considered? Tang En muttered a few words and quickly walked forward. What? The butler was obviously stunned. Wait, which group are you from? Stop. Someone, whoosh. Tang En, who was walking briskly, suddenly pounced on the butler like a gust of wind. A red line flashed in front of the butler, and their figures instantly intertwined as they rushed straight to the garden in front. A huff! The butler subconsciously covered his neck. His fingers were wet, and when he put them in front of his eyes, they were covered in blood. Plop, he fell on his back. The kill happened in an instant. It was only after the butler fell to the ground that the guards at the side reacted. Third butler. Motherf *Cur Chase. Go around and block the front. The garden near the front hall was huge, and there were all kinds of strange flowers, herbs, and fruits. Of course, other than being a place for people to admire, this garden also had a tacit understanding among the nobles. The latter was also the reason why all the noble manors built their gardens next to the reception hall. Imagine discussing life with a romantic girl and a resentful woman under the moonlight, as well as strangers. What a tasteful thing to do! In order for such a tasteless thing to happen smoothly, the garden was naturally built in the most complicated way possible. After all, no one wanted to live while they were enjoying the excitement. Such an environment was undoubtedly the favorite of assassins in the era of cold weapons. After Tang En rushed into the garden, he disappeared without a trace. Everyone, split up and search. Be alert. Don't hold back if you encounter him. Kill him directly. A person who looked like a captain fiercely ordered. Yes. The crowd spread out and began to comb through the entire garden. The guards drew their swords and carefully parted the flowers. They couldn't afford to hurt precious flowers. Thud, thud. In the south of the garden, 2 soft sounds came from the bushes at the side. The guards who were searching at the side immediately approached with their swords in hand. When they parted the bushes, it was empty. Phew! The guard breathed a sigh of relief. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly hung down from the tree behind him like a bat. Hiss! Hiss! The frightened cry was suppressed back into his mouth by a large hand, and he felt a chill on his neck. In an instant, he stopped struggling. Tang En retracted his dagger and bit it in his mouth. He grabbed the shoulder of the guard's corpse with both hands and flipped over the tree. Moments later, Tang En slid down the tree and disappeared into the bushes. Similar scenes were happening all over the garden. Ambushes from behind, kills from jumping down from trees, kills from rushing out of the bushes. Tang En was like the Grim Reaper walking in the dark night, handing out his sickle again and again, taking away the lost souls and leaving behind warm blood. When the captain realized that his surroundings were getting quieter, and that his team members were not responding to his shouts, he realized that something was amiss. How was this a bandit? He was clearly a professional assassin. The captain licked his lips and tightly gripped his sword as he shouted, "Andy? Benson? Brooke? Captain." A voice replied from not far away. It sounded panicked. "Brooke." The captain was overjoyed as he quickly ran over. "Captain, save me!" The short scream came to an abrupt end. "Brooke." The captain's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He brandished his red sword and slashed through the bushes as he rushed over. This was an empty space in the middle of a circular flower bed. At this moment, it was empty except for some blood on the ground. "Ah!" The captain brandished his sword and roared, "Come out! Come out and fight if you have the guts!" There was silence all around. "Coward, coward! Are you looking for me? Die!" The captain suddenly brandished his sword, and the red sword aura exploded. Boom! The flowers and leaves in the flower bed were all shattered. It was empty. A strong wind came from behind. Ding, 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 chi, chi, chi. In the narrow space, Tang En crashed into the captain's chest. The afterimages of his dagger were constantly brandished and blood splattered everywhere. Bang! After a short exchange, the captain was kicked in the abdomen by Tang En. Huff! Huff! The captain tried his best to get up, but he was already powerless to struggle. Tang En took a few steps forward and looked at him indifferently. Suddenly, woof, woof, woof! There were many barking sounds not far away. Clearly, the captain's roar had attracted the attention of the other guards. "Ha! Huff! You can't escape. Is that so?" Tang En bent down and brandished his sword indifferently. Then, he wiped the captain's body and put away his dagger. Getting up, Tang En frowned and looked in the direction of the barking dogs. He had to hurry. It would be troublesome if he was entangled by these dogs. After all, he was one step ahead. A few minutes later, Tang En, who had been running all the way, arrived at the front of the garden. Looking around, Tang En walked to a tall tree on the left. His clothes were hidden there. So annoying. If I knew, I wouldn't have come. Tang En stopped in his tracks and instantly lowered his body to hide behind the flowers. Why did this voice sound a little familiar? What, you're all ignoring me? I didn't do anything. If you have the ability, go find my second brother. Under the tall tree, beside the flowers, a woman in a fiery red dress kicked the trunk angrily. "Shia can't play with me anymore. Those love-struck idiots. Am I not beautiful? Am I not in good shape? Didn't they revolve around me in the past? Well, I'm still bigger. Tsk, it's really big. I didn't notice that this B***tch was so big before." Tang En smacked his lips and secretly commented. This woman was Betsy, who didn't get along with Tang En as soon as they met. "But Shia's legs are so long and so white. They feel so smooth. Hee, I'm so envious. So long, so white and so smooth. Big sister, you should leave. I can't stand it anymore." Tang En unconsciously began to imagine, according to what Betsy described. Then, he thought of Josiah's beautiful face. Tang En suddenly felt that his blood pressure was a little high. Woof, woof, woof. Oh no, Tang En instantly came back to his senses. Damn, I'm going to be killed by this B***tch. Why is there a dog barking? Betsy looked around curiously. Damn, I'm going to fight. Whoosh! The flowers exploded. Tang En quickly rushed out and grabbed Betsy's shoulder. The two of them instantly switched places. Betsy was shocked and was about to scream. Woo-woo! Betsy only felt that her lips were covered by something soft. Before she could struggle, Tang En held the back of her head with one hand and pressed the other under her ear. Betsy immediately fainted. Search carefully. That damned thief is definitely in this area. You go over there, you go over there. Boss, do we still search this area? Smack. The guard's head was hit. Search my ass. Do you want to die? Search this area at this time. Go over there. We'll search this area later. Oh! Smack, still looking? Be careful. After a moment, Tang En raised his head and looked around. He let out a long breath and put down Betsy in front of him. He smacked his lips. It's a little sweet. Why is there a smell of blood? Tang En touched his lips and saw a few streaks of blood on his fingers. He was speechless. Damn, you're good. I didn't get hurt on the way here. The raccoon is on the Sanjiang River. Readers, if you have votes, please vote for me. Thank you. 3 lotus roots floating on the jade pond, the raft can be thought of. Do you understand? I saw the raccoon from Mr. Banana, ha? Chidian. Com welcomes readers to visit and read our latest, fastest, and hottest serialized works on Chidian originals. Chapter 61. After changing his clothes, Tang En carried the unconscious Betsy to a tree branch and fixed her in place. He could not help but chuckle to himself when he thought about how terrified the meddlesome woman would be when she woke up. What should I do with this account book? After dealing with Betsy, Tang En could not help but feel troubled about where to place the account book. It was too risky to keep it on him. If he was searched, he would definitely be exposed. But if he did not keep it on him and could not bring it out, wouldn't it be a waste of effort? After a moment's thought, Tang En tore off the first 3 pages of the account book. He then dug a small hole with his dagger and buried the rest. He definitely could not bring the complete account book out. It was too thick. If there were only a few pages, there would be a lot to do. After doing all this, Tang En slowly entered the front hall through the side door. The atmosphere in the hall was very strange. Everyone was whispering to each other. The loud explosion of the magic lock could naturally be heard here. Following that, the guards around the front hall were mobilized. Naturally, it could not be hidden from the observant eyes. Although no one knew what had happened, they could at least be sure that something had happened in the castle. At the front of the hall, Count Austin's face was ashen. Naturally, he knew very well what that explosion meant. At this moment, a person who looked like a butler hurried into the hall and whispered something into Count Austin's ear. After a moment, Count Austin nodded, his expression slightly better. Everyone. Count Austin held the thick cigarette between his fingers. Everyone, the explosion just now was a foolish thief who tried to steal something. Unexpectedly, he triggered the mechanism and caused the explosion. That thief must be repenting in front of the God of Light now, ha. Even though the joke was very cold, everyone still laughed along. The atmosphere calmed down for a moment. Boom. Just as the atmosphere of the gathering calmed down and everyone's smiles were still hanging on their faces, another huge explosion suddenly rang out. Everyone looked at each other and then turned their gazes to Count Austin. The corner of Count Austin's mouth twitched a few times before he suddenly exploded. Damn it, you're all here to die. Guards, clean up the castle completely and capture these damned bastards. I will personally tie them up and feed them to the sharks. What the **CK are you still standing here for? Go and find out what happened. His anger finally caused Count Austin to tear off his noble disguise and reveal the face of a bandit leader. Yes. The butler who was yelled at scrambled out of the front hall. Tang En's heart skipped a beat when he heard the explosion. Jack was carrying a magic lock on his back. He wondered if the explosion had anything to do with him. At this moment, everyone in the hall knew that something was wrong. The first explosion was the work of a thief, and the second explosion was also the work of a thief? Since when did the noble's castle become a paradise for thieves? Do you think the Royal Alliance has made a move on Count Aston? A noble beside Tang En guessed softly. It can't be. This is too crazy. It's hard to say. Those guys have already been blinded by benefits. What can they not do? But this is a noble's castle. How can they attack it openly? That would provoke a chaotic battle between the nobles. Then why do you think there was an explosion just now? Just as everyone was whispering, another person who looked like a butler quickly ran into the hall. He looked flustered and almost tripped when he entered. Everyone looked at each other. This situation was not good, as expected. After the butler said something in a low voice, Count Austen stood up abruptly, his expression changing drastically. "What did you say?" His tone was filled with disbelief. The butler could only bend over and repeat himself. Boom! Count Austen smashed the chair with his palm. His expression looked like he wanted to devour someone. "Pass down my orders. Lock the door and raise the crossbows. The castle will enter a state of alert. Mobilize the guards to watch the front hall. No one is allowed to leave. If anything happens, kill them without mercy." "Yes." The butler accepted the order and left in a hurry. Whoosh! Since Count Austen did not try to hide his words, everyone in the hall heard him clearly. Instantly there was an uproar. The crowd was furious. Boom! An exquisitely decorated vase in the corner was destroyed by Count Austen's blue chi. The hall immediately fell silent. "Everyone, I lost something important in the castle. The thief might be here now, so I can only trouble you to not move around casually for the time being. Once the matter is investigated, I will personally apologize. Of course, if anyone is unwilling to listen, then don't blame me for turning my back on you." After saying this, Count Austen hurriedly left the hall. At this moment, a few groups of guards appeared at the entrance of the hall. They held long swords in their hands and were ready for battle. "How can this be? How can he hold a banquet like this? Why isn't he letting people leave? This Count Austen is too overbearing. What do you think Count Austen lost? It's obvious that he's in a mess." The hall was in an uproar. Some were denouncing Count Austen, some were guessing what the Austen family had lost, and some were gloating. However, no one stood out forcefully and said that they wanted to leave. Everyone was smart and knew that there was no point in reasoning with an anxious pirate. Tang En knew that the matter had been exposed. Count Austen had hurriedly left, so he must have gone to the study to confirm. He had to quickly deal with the account book in his arms. Where did he hide it? The bottom of his shoes? In his underwear? That's not safe. In the beginning, Tang En still had some hope. There were many nobles here, so Count Austen might not dare to do something as extreme as a body search. After all, that was very rude. However, after a short interaction, Tang En was almost certain that if the vulgar Count Austen had any suspicions, he would definitely ask for a body search without any hesitation. What part of the body can't be searched? Tang En fell into deep thought. "Wow, Madam West, your pearl necklace is so beautiful." "Is it? Thank you. My husband bought it for me from an auction. I heard that it was chosen from thousands of pearls. However, I feel that these pearls are too big and heavy to wear." "Oh, Madam Megan, your dress is also very beautiful." "Is it? Thank you, I just wore it casually. If Madam West likes it, you can go to Clover Clothing Shop. However, if you want to buy something like mine, you might need to make an appointment a month in advance." What was happening in Austen Castle was no doubt important. The men in the hall were discussing heatedly, but the ladies were not interested. They were always interested in clothes, cosmetics, and the like. Dress? Women? Tang En's eyes lit up as he was enlightened. Right, his thoughts had gone astray. He was always thinking about how to get the account book out, but he didn't think about getting someone else to do it. If there was something that Count Austen did not dare to search, it was undoubtedly a woman's body. Not to mention a noble, even a normal man would not tolerate his woman being searched naked by an outsider. It was not only a matter of face, but also a matter of dignity and honor. Tang En looked around and quickly determined his target, Josiah. The reason was simple. He knew Josiah in the hall, and he had sent Josiah home before, so he knew his address. After leaving the noble's castle, he would know where to go to get the account book. Josiah was wearing a light-colored pleated dress that dragged the floor. Because of the silver hoops inside, it looked fluffy. She was looking around as if she was looking for someone. Looking for Betsy? Ha, she's lying on the tree. Tang En walked over casually and tiptoed. Aya. Josiah could not help but stagger because her skirt was stepped on. Eh? I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Tang En apologized in surprise. He took out a white handkerchief from his chest and bent down to wipe his skirt. No need, sir. It's fine. Josiah quickly pressed down on her skirt. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I was thinking about something, so. It's fine, sir. You've already apologized, haven't you? Josiah smiled politely and turned to leave. Done. Tang En snapped his fingers. He had already stuffed the 3 pages of the account book into the gap between the silver hoops and the skirt. But it was a bit of a pity. If he had pulled it higher, he would have been able to see a lot of white. 1. Bow to thank the readers, Dangwa Weirdo and Laddercloud Zone for their tip. 2. Do you have a bookmark and recommendation ticket? I'll exchange it with you at midnight, carrot. Chapter 62. About 15 minutes later, Count Austen returned to the front hall with a gloomy expression. His slightly red eyes scanned the crowd. Good. I didn't expect a simple gathering of the Austen family to attract so many interesting guests. That's great. But since you're here, don't even think about leaving today. Once I catch you, I'll let you know what it means to live a life worse than death. He gritted his teeth, his murderous intent evident. What do you mean, Count Austen? Are all of us here with ulterior motives? An old noble stood up and said angrily. Count Austen glanced at him. Viscount Anthony, I didn't say that. My guards told me that at least 2 or 3 thieves broke into the front hall from my castle and blended in with you. Then you can search as soon as possible. What's with putting us under house arrest? Of course I'll search, but the thing my family lost is very important. Just in case, I've already sent for professionals to search. Viscount, you'll have to wait a little longer. Wait a little longer? That means we'll be searched as thieves. What a joke. You're obviously humiliating us. If this is considered humiliating, then so be it, Count Austen said indifferently as he found a chair and sat down. I want to duel with you. Viscount Anthony's face was red with anger. He trembled as he was about to take off his white glove. Duel? Everyone looked at Viscount Anthony, who had 1 foot in the grave, and Count Austen, who was as strong as a bear. Their faces darkened. Naturally, the duel was a farce. Someone had already stopped the old Viscount from getting hot-tempered. Count Austen turned his face to the side, clearly not caring. The crowd looked at Count Austen, who was sitting at the door, and knew they could not leave now. There were naturally people who were angry, but no one was willing to offend this pirate leader. Soon, the professionals Count Austen spoke of arrived. Oh, there's quite a crowd. A brawny man rubbing his red nose walked in. He was slovenly dressed. Good evening, Count Austen. The nobles looked at each other. Bose? It turned out to be him. This was truly professional. Everyone was naturally familiar with Bose. Not only was he a celebrity in Lion City, he was also famous in the entire empire. Not long ago, the entire Bran was shocked when he killed hundreds of assassins in one fell swoop. Chief Cavalry Bose, I'm really sorry for calling you so late at night. Perhaps it was because he had a favor to ask, but Count Austen was very polite. I believe my butler has already told you the details. Now that everyone is here, what do you think we should do? You're too kind, your lordship. This is the job of the garrison. Bose glanced at the hall and chuckled. Since everyone is here, there's no need to rush. There are so many nobles here, I should be the first to greet them. After saying that, Bose walked into the crowd and kept bowing. Oh, isn't this Viscount West? Good evening, good evening. TSK, your lordship Viscount Anthony, you don't look too good. You're already so old, remember to rest more. Things like gatherings should be left to the young. At this moment, the hall was completely silent. Only bows could be heard greeting non-stop. The nobles could only respond with strange expressions. "Ha, thief!" Bang, with a face full of smiles, Bose suddenly extended his right fist and smashed it towards the young man in front of him. The man was caught off guard and his forceful defense was broken through. His chest took a heavy punch and he flew out. "Thief!" Bose stepped forward and grabbed the man's right shoulder with his 5 fingers glowing red. The man's reaction was not slow. He quickly lowered his body and shrunk his shoulder in the air. His left hand flicked a dagger towards Bose's fingers. First, as if he had already expected the man's reaction, Bose suddenly shook his wrist. The claw that was originally going for his right shoulder grabbed the man's left wrist and pressed down. Crack, crack, ah! The 10 fingers were connected to the heart, let alone the wrist. The young man immediately screamed in pain. Live. Bose was not going to let him go. He grabbed the man's wrist and used the momentum to kick his knee. Crack. The man opened his mouth and screamed again. His body rolled on the ground like a mud fish. "Good evening," Bose said to the man on the ground with a smile. "Mr. Thief, good evening." A sentence was only 8 words, and it only took a moment to say it. But at this moment, a man had an arm and a leg broken. He rolled on the ground miserably and wailed. Everyone looked at Bose, who was still smiling, and couldn't help but gulp. Their bodies were cold as if they had fallen into an ice cave. "How rude. You should reply to me with good evening, you know. Although I was woken up from a beautiful dream, I'm not in a good mood at all." Bose lifted the young man on the ground with one hand and used the other to grab the ice in the wine glass next to him. He rubbed it on the latter's face. In just a moment, the originally fair-skinned young man turned into a middle-aged man with many wrinkles. "TSK, with your disguise, you still dare to pretend?" Weiss shook his head and wiped his hands with a napkin. Bang, bang. Just as everyone was shocked by Bose's methods, a man in a luxurious purple velvet robe suddenly rushed out from the side door of the front hall with a short sword in his hand. In just a moment, he broke through the guards by the door and was about to rush out of the hall. Suddenly, a green spear whistled in from outside the door and aimed at the man's heart. Ding! The man in purple swung his sword to block, and his sword hit the tip of the spear. However, even though he managed to block the attack, his charging figure came to a halt. Hiss, 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 the green light on the green spear flowed like water. The tip of the spear pierced through the air and scattered a dense number of spear shadows, almost blocking the entire side door. Ding, ding, ding! The sound of clashing continued. The spear had the natural advantage of attacking from a distance. In addition, the spear user's spear skills were flawless. Therefore, the man in purple could only helplessly be forced back into the hall. Needless to say, everyone knew that the man in purple was also a thief. He must have been frightened by Bose's thunder and wanted to leave the front hall to find other ways to escape. Who would have thought that he would be stopped by the person outside the door, and now he was forced back into the hall. Ding! With a soft sound, the man in purple, who was panicking, had his short sword knocked to the ground. Before he could react, a cold light was already at his throat. A few guards quickly came in from outside and tied the man in purple to the ground. When he wiped his face, it was indeed a disguise. The originally noble young man had instantly turned into a sallow middle-aged man. At this time, the spear outside the door was withdrawn, and a vigorous middle-aged man came in. It was Bose's best partner, Bugnes. "It's him." Tang En's heart skipped a beat. It was not going to be easy today. In fact, Bose and Bugnes had already fought with Tang En. Against Bose, Tang En had almost no chance of winning. Against Bugnes, although Tang En had successfully broken out of the encirclement at the Flame Dragon Union's encampment last time, that was mostly luck. Now that the two of them were in the hall, Tang En could only pray that his disguise could fool Bose's eyes. Otherwise, he would definitely follow in the footsteps of the previous 2 thieves. At this time, Bose was still enthusiastically greeting them one by one. However, the people he greeted were obviously more careful. No one wanted to be punched for no reason, right? Not long after, Bose arrived not far from Tang'an. His nose twitching a few times, Bose suddenly stepped over a noble who was about to accept his greeting, and arrived in front of Tang'an. "Good evening. Your Excellency looks a little unfamiliar. How should I address you?" Chapter 63. Good evening, you don't look familiar. How should I address you? Tang'an bowed slightly and said calmly, Ambrose Peter. Tang'an was dressed as a middle-aged man with a gloomy face, and his cold voice matched his temperament. Ambrose. Bose lightly tapped his forehead. This surname seems to be more common in the north. Tang'an looked at Bose in surprise and praised, Sir Bose is very knowledgeable. I am a wood merchant from Shanghai City in the north. Haha, it's not that old Bao is knowledgeable. When I was young, I lived in the Xiong border city in the north, so I still have some memories of it. Bose raised his head and laughed. I wonder what the Xiong border city looks like now. I really miss it. Sir Peter is from the north, so you must have been there before. Can you describe it to me? I'm sorry about that. Although I'm from the north, I only run a single line in the wood business, which is between Shanghai City and the other cities in the south, so I don't know anything about the Xiong border city. Tang'an's reply was flawless. I see. That's a pity. Bose shook his head as if it was a pity. Then, he said, Your Excellency Peter is in the timber business. How's the market now? It's okay, there aren't any big fluctuations. Tang'an replied vaguely. He couldn't help but be alarmed. Bose always ended his greetings with just a few words, but when it came to him, he talked a lot. It was obvious that he felt something. That's good. And what a coincidence. I have a friend who recently said that he wants to start a wood business and is preparing to sell to the north. However, he isn't sure about the land trade route. Also, it's hard for him to decide whether to transport red incense wood or ebony iron wood. Sir Peter is an expert, so I hope you can give him some pointers. After saying that, Bose stared at Tang'an with a burning gaze. This. Tang'an hesitated and said, This involves business secrets, so it's not convenient for me to say. Bose's eyes widened. Mr. Peter, that's a little petty. You don't have the boldness of a northerner at all. It's just a route and a choice. There's no trade secret. But, Bose took half a step forward, stared into Tang'an's eyes and said, Mr. Peter, if you continue to refuse, people will inevitably think that you don't know anything. What do you think? Tang'an remained silent and stood still. The surrounding crowd also felt that something was wrong and hurriedly retreated. Bose was suddenly stunned, because when he stared closely into Tang'an's eyes, he discovered that the other party's eyes had suddenly become very empty, as if his soul had been extracted, leaving behind only a shell. After a few seconds, Tang'an's eyes regained their luster. He sighed and said, Well, since Sir Bose has said so, then I can only tell you the truth. Bose frowned. Red incense wood can't be transported, or else you will suffer a great loss. Because the climate in the north is very cold, the red incense wood will most likely be frozen and cracked when transported there. Ebony iron wood is a good choice. This wood is heavy and won't be frozen and cracked. It can also be used as a building material to block the cold air. It's considered a hot commodity in the north wood market. Tang'an's words were eloquent and reasonable. Many nobles and merchants who were knowledgeable nodded their heads lightly. As for the route, if Sir Bose's friend chooses to take the land route, then even if he is transporting ebony iron wood, he will still suffer a loss. You must know that the distance between the two places is very long and the cost is very high. In addition, the north is full of barren hills and treacherous rivers, thieves and bandits. It's really too dangerous for a merchant team to pass through. So the only way to transport wood is to choose the water route. Lion City is behind Brand's economic artery, the Llano River. Going north from this route, not only will the transportation cost be lower, but the time required will also be much faster. Well, Sir Bose, are you satisfied with my answer? I have the system in my head. As long as there's information, I dare to answer 100,000 questions. I'm satisfied, I'm satisfied. Bose forced a smile and said, I thank you on behalf of my friend first. Let me toast you with a cup of wine. After that, Bose picked up 2 crystal wine glasses from the table beside him and stuffed one of them into Tang En's hand. Cheers! Cheers! Bang! The glass shattered and some red wine spilled on Tang En's face. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Bose hurriedly took a napkin and wiped Tang En's face. Old Tang En used to drink from a bowl. He's really not used to drinking from a crystal glass. It shattered when we touched the glass. After being wiped vigorously a few times, Tang En reached out and pressed Bose's hand. I understand, I understand. When I drank in the north, I also used to drink from a bowl. I'm really not used to holding a crystal glass. I'll do it myself. Tang En took the napkin and wiped his face a few times. Sir Bose, is there any left on my face? Why are you looking at me like this? No, I'm really sorry. Bose's expression was a little absent-minded. Haha, it doesn't matter. Tang En shrugged. You want to see through my disguise with a glass of wine? Are you kidding me? Bose's senses were undoubtedly quite sharp, especially for an assassin who had just killed someone. Although he couldn't see any flaws in Tang En's face from the beginning, he still noticed that something was wrong. After several verbal probing attempts were all resolved by Tang En, he decided to find a way to wipe Tang En's face. As a result, he succeeded, but Tang En's face remained unchanged. Of course, Bose couldn't be blamed for the failed probing. After all, he was exposed to the disguise techniques of another world. Now that he suddenly encountered another system of disguise techniques, there was naturally nothing he could do. Although he still had doubts in his heart, Bose could only give up and continue walking. There were a total of 5 thieves that came in tonight. 1 failed to crack the magic lock and was killed by the explosion. 2 were now captured. Jack's whereabouts were unknown, and Tang En passed safely. Bose naturally couldn't find any thieves in the later search. On the other side, Count Orsten had already searched the 2 thieves, but he didn't find what he wanted to see. Seeing that Bose had finished searching, Count Orsten's expression immediately turned ugly. At this moment, Viscount Anthony stood up again and said sarcastically, Sir Count, now that the search is over, can you let us old men go back and rest? Count Orsten's expression was as gloomy as a dark cloud. He ignored the words and called over 2 guards. Take these 2 damned thieves away and serve them well. I want to know who ordered them as soon as possible. Yes, Sir Count. Bose furrowed his brows. Count Orsten waved his hand. Don't worry, Chief Bose. I'll keep them alive for you to report back. Bose furrowed his brows and fell silent. He had a nagging feeling that something was amiss, but Tang En's mistake at the beginning made him hesitate. Count Orsten glanced at Viscount Anthony. Go back? Sure. But you have to wait until after the body search. Body search? What a joke! Count Orsten, you're too rude. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Everyone in the hall was instantly angered and started condemning Orsten. Bose finally couldn't suppress the throbbing in his heart and asked, Sir Count, do you know that guard just now? What? Count Orsten was currently being condemned. How could he understand Bose's question? Bose had no choice but to ask again. Guard? Is there a problem? Count Orsten took a few steps back and called over a butler. The guard just now? I didn't pay much attention to him. I think he's an unfamiliar face. The butler tried his best to recall. Oh no. Bose slapped his thigh and roared, Bugnes, bring your brothers and follow me. Count Orsten was confused. What's wrong? One of the guards just now was in disguise. Bose said and quickly rushed out of the hall. What? Count Orsten was stunned at first, then he flew into a rage. Damn it, you're too much. Guards, follow me. Sir, what do we do here? The butler on the side quickly asked. Those who want to be searched can leave. Those who don't want to stay here. With that, Count Orsten took a battle sword and rushed out murderously. Phew. Hurry up and upload, or else Civet's character will be ruined. Please recommend. Chapter 64. All the guests were dumbfounded when they saw Count Orsten suddenly abandon them and run out of the hall. This guy was going to be a scoundrel to the end. The butler braced himself and bowed. Sirs, the Count said that we can leave immediately after the search. Those who are unwilling, might have to stay here for the night. How dare you? How dare you? I'll stay here. I'd like to see how long this pirate will keep me under house arrest. Needless to say, the moment he said that, countless spittle flew out. The butler did not dare to be as forceful as Count Orsten, so he lowered his head and silently endured the spittle. The butler could not make any decisions. He was only responsible for carrying out orders. The noble guests cursed a few times, but seeing that there was no response, they stopped. In the end, they looked at each other and gradually fell into silence. On the other side, after Count Orsten rushed out of the hall with his sword, he saw Bose and the others in the garden. Of course, there were also a few figures lying on the ground. How is it? Count Orsten asked anxiously. Bose shook his head. They're all dead. 2 thieves and a guard. All of them had their throats slit with a dagger. Motherf ****. Count Orsten cursed. He felt aggrieved. There was no good news tonight. He had finally caught 2 thieves and was about to ask them something, but they were killed again. Was this still the impregnable castle that he had always been proud of? Why did it look like a farmer's garden now? People could come and go as they pleased. Count Orsten's eyes were bloodshot. He said fiercely, Chase. He can't escape. I've already ordered the castle to be locked down. Bose sighed. He should have gone to the back door of the castle. When I came, didn't the butler say that a thief had already rushed out by blowing up the back door? Count Orsten was stunned. Then, he threw his sword on the ground. Damn it. Also, Bose hesitated. I suspect that the person pretending to be a guard is Ghostface. Count Orsten opened his mouth and was dumbfounded. Ghostface. At this moment, the people in the hall had already left after being searched. As long as someone took the lead, the rest of the matter would be much easier to handle. The man was taken to the side for a detailed search, while the woman handed over her belongings, such as a scarf, a hat, and other things for a brief inspection. Then, after checking the carriage, they could leave. Tang En followed the crowd through the inspection and drove out of the castle. After exiting Orsten Castle, Tang En let out a long sigh of relief as he looked back at the anchor symbol. He had finally passed tonight's test. Then, Tang En turned his horse around and rode in another direction. The woman's inspection was simple, so Josiah left the castle half an hour earlier than Tang En. He should be home now. After galloping for about half an hour, Tang En stopped the carriage in a remote area in the eastern part of the city. After walking through a small forest, they arrived outside a manor with a bauhinia flower symbol hanging on it. This was Josiah's home, the manor of Baron Crowley's family. Of course, this place did not have the perverse security of the Orsten Castle. Tang En walked around the manor and climbed over the wall at the side. The first thing he saw was a large lawn. In the middle of the lawn was an oak tree with thick root. Since it was late autumn, there were not many leaves on the oak tree. Behind the lawn was a row of 3-story jade-white buildings with golden eaves and green tiles, with many windows. Although it was not grand, it was rather exquisite. This place did not have the perverse security of a noble's castle, but it did not mean that there were no guards. Every once in a while, he could still see guards in light armor patrolling the night. Of course, such guards were not a problem for Tang En. After observing for a while, Tang En figured out the route and frequency of the guards patrolling the night. Taking advantage of the time difference between the patrolling guards, Tang En ran along the wall and passed through the main building from the side. Behind the main building were more than 10 small buildings scattered in the flower bed and orchard. They were not far apart from each other and looked rather elegant from afar. The environment is not bad, but there are too many buildings. Tang En smacked his lips and slowly groped around. The design of a noble's small building was, of course, based on aesthetic. Therefore, the balconies had various artistic protrusions, which undoubtedly made it convenient for Tang En. He jumped from one windowsill to another and then climbed onto the eaves of the next small building. His movements were smooth and simple. He wandered around the manor like Spider-Man. Lisa? Just as Tang En climbed onto a windowsill, a soft cry came from inside. The voice belonged to Josiah. "Tsk, my luck is not bad." Tang En extended his dagger and slowly cut open the window. He then climbed in softly. "Lisa? Is that you? Help me get a dry towel." Tang En, who had just touched the ground, was instantly stunned. No way, how could his senses be so sensitive? When he went around a layer of light gauze in front of him, Tang En was completely dumbfounded. There was a bathtub in the middle of the room. Josiah was sitting in it with his flawless white shoulders exposed. From time to time, he would raise his white wrists and gently wipe his body. "Lisa, give me the towel." Josiah extended his white wrist behind him. Tang En swallowed his saliva and looked around. He saw a white towel on a wooden shelf at the side. Under the towel were the clothes that Josiah was wearing today. The fluffy long skirt was also there. Tang En gently walked over and picked up the towel. He took a few steps forward and handed it to Josiah. Because of the angle, Tang En's gaze slid down from Josiah's sharp shoulders, through his delicate collarbone, and landed on a bulging white mound. Because Josiah's right hand was raised and his body was slightly tilted back, Tang En also saw the trembling pink. "Thank you. Oh, Lisa, go and check if the window isn't closed properly. I felt a cool breeze just now." Tang En nodded subconsciously. He immediately came back to his senses and couldn't help but despise himself. "I'm not Lisa. Why did I nod? Pa, miss, you called me." A little girl answered and pushed the door open. What followed was a scream. F***ck. Tang En slapped his forehead. He was too careless. He was too focused on the beautiful scenery in front of him and didn't hear the footsteps behind him. Josiah turned around in shock. "What's wrong?" "It's you." Another scream was heard. Tang En's night clothes were left on a tree in the back garden of Austin Castle, so he didn't cover his face this time. He still had the appearance of a hooked nose. There was no doubt that his hooked nose was too eye-catching, so Josiah still remembered the person who stepped on her skirt tonight. Tang En didn't dare to say anything at this time. He picked up his skirt and quickly retreated. Shameless! Josiah was already angry. Now that she saw that Tang En wanted to take her skirt away, she became even angrier. She spread out her hands and a cold blue light bloomed. Whoosh, whoosh, F***ck. Tang En quickly turned around and 2 icicles brushed past him. Bang bang! The wooden window shattered. Whoosh! An ice ball quickly followed. Bang! Tang En flicked his dagger and shattered the ice ball. A visible layer of ice quickly spread on the dagger. The cold in his hand was threatening. Tang En was shocked. He quickly threw away the dagger and jumped out of the window. Water entanglement! With a shout, a ribbon of water flew out of the window and wrapped around Tang En's ankle. F***ck, what is this? It was Tang En's first time fighting with a magician. He was obviously not used to it. Bang! Tang En's hand flashed with a bloody light. He turned around and shattered the ribbon of water with a punch. He landed on the ground and immediately rushed toward the wall. Not far away, a group of guards arrived late. Josiah didn't have any clothes on, so she naturally wouldn't chase after him. She could only watch as the shameless person who stole her skirt jumped over the wall and left. Humph! Josiah angrily stomped her foot. This pervert. P.S. Bowing to thank book friends Earth Mud and Chin Shi for their tips. Yep, Raccoon created a new book group, 278819949. Welcome everyone. Chapter 65. Late at night, the stone roads and alleys of the West District were all quiet. Most of the families around had already gone to bed. Occasionally, there were a few cries of children, but they were quickly comforted by the adults. At this moment, there was a figure peeking out of the alley, looking around anxiously. Why isn't he here yet? Could it be that Arthur is blocked? Jack scratched his head in distress. Sigh, if I knew he was so unreliable, I would have been better off keeping the account book. I say, can't you hope for something good from me? Jack was shocked. He raised his head abruptly and saw a figure flash out from the side like a ghost. Even if you get blocked 10 times, I won't get blocked even once, Tang Yen said unhappily. Jack laughed dryly and said, hee, that's true. With your disguise skills, you can definitely get out of trouble even if you get blocked. Really? Then why did I hear someone say I'm unreliable just now? Who? Stand up and see if your Uncle Jack will cut him. Jack smiled mischievously and said, Where's the account book? Did you bring it? Return the account book? Tang Yen's face suddenly darkened. It's good enough that you can keep your life. Do you know who came later? Who? Bose. Jack's face changed. Bose came too? He had to admit that Bose was definitely the nemesis of those who walked in the dark in Liyan City. Yeah, your 2 colleagues were caught on the spot. Huh. Jack's face was filled with joy and pity. Luckily I didn't go back to the front hall. Sigh, what a pity, 10,000 gold coins flew away just like that. Tang Yen blinked. 10,000 gold coins is nothing. Didn't you carry a lot of things at that time? Sigh, don't mention it. Jack's face was full of bad luck. Those guards were too fierce. I could only throw things to divert their attention. In the end, I threw out a magic lock to escape. Damn it, I worked for nothing tonight. Yeah, sigh. Forget it. Since it's not done, I'm leaving. Jack cupped his hands in frustration and turned to leave. Well, goodbye. Tang Yen turned around and walked into the alley. Arthur, why are you still walking inside? Turning in the mission. You don't even have an account book. Arthur, you actually lied to me. Jack followed him, both happy and angry. The corner of Tang Yen's mouth twitched. Haha, I'm not lying to you. I didn't bring the complete account book with me. I only brought 3 pages. 3 pages? Enough is enough. When the time comes, I will negotiate and say that the account book only has these 3 pages. Ha! You're really wretched. Thanks for the compliment. If a thief doesn't play dirty, how can he have a future? At the entrance of the abandoned manor, the gray-robed man was pacing back and forth anxiously. He couldn't have failed, right? Thinking back to his subordinate's report of Bose entering the castle, he couldn't help but feel upset. It's this Bose again. Damn it, he keeps ruining things, formulating a plan, bribing spies, investigating the secret passage, arranging for thieves to enter the castle. Every step was very secretive and difficult. Now, because of an unexpected factor, it could lead to failure. The gray-robed man was unwilling. The gray-robed man suddenly raised his head and looked forward. Not long after, he saw 2 figures talking in the alley. Although he didn't know either of them, the gray-robed man was still overjoyed. They were thieves after all. How could they not look? Jack smiled and greeted. Ha, the employer must be waiting anxiously. Hee, it's fine. I wonder if that thing. The gray-robed man probed. Jack took out a piece of paper and placed it in front of the gray-robed man. On a certain day, transport 300 sets of black iron heavy armor to the Blackbeard pirate. Fee 25,000 gold coins. On a certain day, transport 50 fox girls from the northern wilderness to Mingguang City. Fee, 20,000 gold coins. This is it. The gray-robed man excitedly grabbed the paper. Schwa. He grabbed nothing. Jack took back the paper and chuckled. Oh. The gray-robed man took out a wooden box and opened it. There was a thick stack of gold notes with a face value of 1,000 gold coins. Gold notes from the Bran Empire Bank. You can exchange them in any city in the Bran Empire. Are you satisfied? Satisfied. Jack happily handed over the 3 account books with one hand and the 11 gold notes with the other. TSK. Jack nodded and counted the 11 gold notes from the beginning to the end, then from the end to the beginning, then from the beginning to the end again. Tang En unconsciously turned his head away. Damn, I have to be prepared to lose face whenever I'm with this kind of person. Why are there only 3 pages? The gray-robed man took the paper and frowned as he asked in surprise. Jack satisfactorily put away the gold notes and said without changing his expression, "This is the account book from the study. There are only 3 pages. Maybe it was just recorded." The gray-robed man didn't suspect anything. He put away the account book and cupped his hand. "Thank you for your help this time." "Haha, you're welcome. You provided the money and we did the work." "Oh right, you don't have to wait for the other 3 thieves. They probably won't be coming. That's why, if you want to find thieves, you have to find professionals like us. As long as you have enough money, I can even steal the City Lord's seal for you." Haha. Jack put his hands on his waist and began to boast shamelessly. The gray-robed man's face mask moved slightly, as if the corner of his mouth twitched. He cupped his hands and laughed apologetically. After the mission was completed, the gray-robed man obviously didn't have the mood to chat. After a few polite words, he said goodbye and quickly left with the group of black-armored guards. In order to prevent this kind of thing from happening, Tang En and Jack also quickly left the alley and found a shadow to deal with the stolen good. Here are 5,000 gold coins." Jack handed over 5 gold note. "Don't say that I'm not loyal. We agreed at the beginning that you'll take 40% and I'll take 60%. Now there are 11,000 gold coins. Then I'll take 60% and you take 50%. Tang En nodded and took the 5 gold note. Touching the soft material, he couldn't help but sigh. "Damn, I've finally become a rich person. Also, I'll give you another gift," Jack suddenly said with a smile. "Gift?" Tang En looked at Jack in surprise. Is this guy's brain damaged from excitement? Thinking about how the 2 of them quarreled intensely for a while yesterday, he suddenly gave money and a gift. What's with that look?" Jack rolled his eyes and said, "Don't you use a dagger? Your dagger is too lousy. I'll give you an absolutely top-notch dagger." After saying that, Jack handed over a pitch-black dagger from his bosom. Tang En took it and looked left and right. He pointed at the 6 holes on both sides and said, "Damn, where are the diamonds?" This dagger was the same multicolored dagger that Tang En and Selena had seen in the secret passage in Earl Aston's study. However, the multicolored dagger had now become monochromatic, and the diamonds on it had all been removed, leaving behind 6 ugly holes. "The dagger is yours. Naturally, the diamonds are mine. Don't be too greedy, okay? The value of meteorite essence isn't low." That's not right." Tang En suddenly reacted. "Didn't you say that you lost everything in the secret passage? Where did this dagger come from? Why do you have such a strong sense of distrust towards me?" Jack blinked and looked aggrieved. "I lost everything in the bag, but I didn't lose anything in my pocket. I only brought out this dagger and the Ocean Tide Battle Aura mental cultivation method." "Don't pretend to be aggrieved." Tang En saw through Jack's disguise and said, "Didn't you want to leave at the entrance of the alley just now? That means you didn't intend to give this dagger to me?" Ahem. Jack's old face turned red, and then he argued, "Didn't you lie to me just now? Besides, I'm giving you the dagger now." "This is different." Both sides argued for a while. The final result was that Jack took out a diamond to compensate Tang En for being deceived and deeply hurt. Jack sighed painfully. This is blatant extortion. No, this is called karma. Tang En calmly put the diamond into his pocket. P.S. Please vote Sanjiang. Civet Cat doesn't want to be ranked that high. But now, he is the last. This is unbearable to watch. So, please click on Sanjiang, receive Sanjiang ticket, drag it below and vote for the strongest killer system. Civet Cat thanks. Chapter 66. About 10 miles to the southeast of Austin Castle, there was another huge structure. If one looked down from the top of the East District, they would find that this was the center of the noble's residence. Its walls were not as tall as Austin Castle, and its main buildings did not look luxurious. Even the golden lion emblem in front of its door felt a bit old. However, when one looked directly at this noble's castle, the first thought that came to mind would be words like history, rich, and history. This was the castle of one of the 4 counts of Lion City, the Robert family. At the back of the castle, a group of black-armored guards escorted a gray-clothed man through the back door. After entering the castle, the gray-clothed man waved his hand and said something. The black-armored guards bowed and left. Then the gray-clothed man hurriedly walked into the castle. He seemed to have a high status, as the butler and guards he met along the way all bowed to him. After a while, he arrived in front of a 3-story stone building in the castle. After entering, he went straight to the 2nd floor and finally stopped in front of a red Phoebe door. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. The gray-clothed man pushed open the door. The decorations in the room were quite simple. Facing the door was a large office table that took up a quarter of the room. There were all kinds of documents and materials on the table. Although there were a lot of things, perhaps the owner liked cleanliness, so everything was placed neatly. Behind the table sat a man with his head lowered as he read documents. His blonde hair was dazzling. After the gray-clothed man came in, he did not immediately say anything. Instead, he closed the door and stood respectfully beside the table. The room suddenly became quiet again. During this time, only the sound of the blonde man flipping through papers could be heard. Occasionally, he would pick up his quill and write something. After about 10 minutes, the blonde man finally closed the documents and raised his head. His chiseled face seemed to show his decisive personality. Although his griffin-like eyes were slightly bloodshot, they were still sharp. This person was the 2nd son of the Robert family, Bevan. I've said this many times, Gray, sit down when you come in. All right, young Master Bevan, I'll be careful next time. The gray-clothed man, no, Gray bowed. Just like he said before. Well, I hope you've really listened to me this time. Bevan smiled and shook his head. Then, he calmly asked, how's that matter? Gray showed a trace of excitement. He took out 3 pieces of paper and put them on the table. Young Master Bevan, it's a success. If Tang En were here, he would have recognized the 3 pieces of paper as the pages of the account book he had brought out of Austin Castle. Bevan nodded and picked up the paper. He quickly flipped through it and laughed involuntarily. This Aston family really dares to do anything. Yes. Gray sighed. If these 3 papers end up on the Imperial Court's table, the Austin family will have no choice but to become pirates again. I won't let that happen, because we won't get anything. Bevan put down the paper and smiled. So, Count Orston should be thanking us. As a reward, giving me his 4 docs is not too much. Yes, Count Aston should thank you for your kindness. Ha! Bevan finally showed an excited expression. He immediately said, let the news out tomorrow that the Austin family is smuggling to the enemy country. 2 days later, we'll contact Count Aston again and hand over the doc. Yes. Gray bowed. Right? How's the construction of the new docks going? Bevan tapped his forehead and asked. It's not going well. The new docks will take up 5 Street. Only one has been cleared out. What's going on? Bevan frowned. Wasn't the document sent out 2 weeks ago? Gray shrugged. The government office responded that they've been working on it. That bunch of useless people. If I were the city master, I'd definitely remove them. Bevan's eyes instantly sharpened. He took a deep breath and said, "Send some people from the Golden Lion Gang to clear out the other 4 streets." "Okay, but the cost of the demolition," Gray said hesitantly. "We don't have much money left. The elders in the family have some opinions about our recent spending." Bevan massaged his temples. "Those old fogies. Let the 5 families of the Dirks provide some money for now. Once we're done, we'll report it to the finance office together. They've eaten a lot of meat recently. It's time for them to contribute." "Okay. All right, let's turn our attention back to the main character, Tang En." After splitting the loot, Tang En chatted with Jack for a while before he prepared to leave. Before he left, Jack left him an address. Because he knew that Tang En was an assassin, Jack tactfully didn't ask for Tang En's address. He only told him to bring him along the next time there was a big deal. Tang En naturally agreed. Tang En fell into deep thought as he allowed the carriage to slowly move towards the southwest. The mission of stealing Earl Orston's smuggling account book had been completed. Tang En had gained a lot of benefits, but he still had no clue about the mysterious sender. Tang En didn't like this feeling. It was like walking in the dark of night. You never knew when a big hole would appear in front of you, waiting for you to fall in. "Damn it, don't let me know who you are or else, Just as Tang En was gritting his teeth, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. At this time, the carriage was passing through a narrow bluestone street. The sound of horse hooves hitting the ground echoed far away. Tang En leaned forward slightly, his legs tense. His eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. The feeling just now. It couldn't be wrong. He was definitely being watched. The carriage continued forward, passing by low houses. Suddenly, the chill dropped again. This time, it was much stronger. Tang En's body felt like it had fallen into an ice cave. It was cold both inside and outside. Moving his wrist, Tang En resisted the subconscious reaction of flicking out his dagger. The chill grew stronger and stronger, like a raging wave crashing against the shore. It was as if it wanted to break Tang En's psychological defense. The horse seemed to have sensed something strange as well. It stopped moving forward, its hooves digging into the ground uneasily. Tang En suddenly turned his head to look to the right. There was a low-tiled house on the other side. When Tang En first looked at it, it was empty. But now, a figure appeared on the roof like a ghost. Although the sky was dark, Tang En still recognized who it was. It was because his attire was too eye-catching. Flowery clothes, mask, long hair. It was Ghostface, whom Tang En wanted to investigate recently. End of third update. Let's advertise again. Raccoon Book Friends Group, 278819949. Chapter 67. Grimace sat casually on the roof and looked at Tang En quietly. The night wind blew. His flowery clothes and long hair fluttered slightly. The devil mask with messy symbols on it looked indescribably strange against the backdrop of the night. It seemed like he was laughing wildly, but also seemed like he was weeping sadly. Tang En would never have dreamed that he would meet Grimace like this. Looking at the situation, Grimace was obviously waiting for him. This was what he could not figure out the most. He had never interacted with Grimace before. The only time they had been in close contact was a long time ago at the Green Forest Cemetery in Lion City. However, Tang En had been faking it that time. Moreover, they had only met by chance. They could not even be considered as acquaintances. However, Grimace was right in front of him now. A man's name was like a tree's shadow. Grimace had been in Lion City for so many years. None of his assassination targets had survived. It was enough to make one tremble in fear. Tang En would be lying if he said he was not afraid. Those who did not face Grimace would never feel that bone-deep oppression. At this moment, the icy feeling suddenly receded like the tide. Before Tang Yen could breathe a sigh of relief, Grimace stood up and opened his arms to reveal a pair of unique flowery daggers. F***ck. Tang Yen no longer felt lucky. He flipped his hand to reveal a dagger that was full of holes. Grimace's gaze stopped on the uniquely shaped dagger for 2 seconds. He pursed his red lips slightly. Cough cough. Tang Yen's face was burning. He had lost his original dagger when he stole Josiah's dress at Crowley Manor. Now, he could only use the extremely ugly dagger that Jack had given him as an emergency. Tsk tisk. Grimace tapped the roof tiles with his toes and walked a few feet forward. He suddenly appeared on top of the carriage and stabbed his dagger straight at Tang Yen's head. Quick activation, phantom activation, double increase activation. There was nothing much to say in a confrontation between assassins. They could only attack. Tang Yen activated 3 skills consecutively. His body kept changing its size. Following that, more than 10 red dagger shadows enveloped Grimace, who was coming at him from the sky. Ding, 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 sparks flickered, and the sound of rain hitting banana leaves was heard continuously. Within a short period of time, both sides had exchanged daggers for more than 10 times. Tang Yen's dozens of attacks were all blocked. Ghastly leaped backward and flipped onto the roof of the car. There was a time limit to the activation of the skill. Tang Yen did not dare to waste any time and quickly jumped onto the roof of the car. Grimace was looking at his dagger speechlessly. It had only been a short exchange, but there were already more than 10 small dents on the blade. It was almost a jagged dagger. Ha ha! Tang Yen went up to the roof of the car and saw this scene. He was overjoyed. It was worthy of being called the black iron meteorite that could cut gold and jade. Although the appearance of this dagger was a little bad, its sharpness was excellent. Since he had an advantage, he naturally had to grab hold of it. Tang Yen stepped forward and flicked his wrist, pulling down layers of red threads to wrap around Ghostface. Humph! Ghostface snorted coldly. The golden light on his dagger flowed like water, scattering golden specks that fell into the red line like a storm. Hiss, 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 stab, stab, stab. On the roof of the car that was less than 10 feet long, 2 silhouettes kept flashing like ghosts. Gradually, the silhouettes faded away, leaving only the dense red threads and thousands of golden specks. In the beginning, the red threads and the golden specks each occupied half of the roof. The red threads intended to wrap around the entire car roof, forming a cocoon. The golden specks scattered everywhere like a starry sky, piercing with all their might. The strange thing was that even with such a dense barrage of attacks, there were still occasional sounds of collisions. After more than 10 breaths, Tang Yen's plan was foiled. The red threads were scattered by the golden specks. The red threads retreated and set up a defense on one side of the car roof. The golden specks were so powerful that they quickly occupied more than half of the car roof. Like thousands of falling stars, they smashed into the red threads, intending to crush them completely. Counterattack, suppress, counterattack, suppress, suppress, suppress. The red thread's defense area was getting smaller and smaller, finally occupying only a corner of the car roof. The golden specks were still attacking like raging waves, trying to break the last dam. Tang Yen's expression was cold. He waved the dagger in his hand again and again, his blood chi flowing like water. Unable to do what one wishes, the gap. Looking at the golden specks that kept breaking through the defense line, Tang Yen's red threads were already at their limit. It was not that Tang Yen had never been defeated in the other world. At the Flame Dragon Union's base, he was sent flying by Boza's flame-splitting slash. Boza's combat energy was so domineering that it was unstoppable. However, in terms of pressure, Tang Yen still felt that Ghostface in front of him was a notch higher. Ghostface's golden combat energy was very strange. When they fought, he could clearly feel that it was also a domineering path. However, Ghostface's domineering performance was very subtle, or rather, very reasonable. Ghostface did not waste a single bit of his combat energy, all of it was suppressed to the point of droplets. This suppression gave his combat energy an additional penetrating power and continuity. While he was thinking, the red thread's defense collapsed completely, and the golden specks rushed before him. Tang En stared intently at the gold dots. Close. It was now. Random flower. The fragmented red glow suddenly gathered and exploded. In the small space, the red sword glow instantly swept away all the golden specks. A surprised voice came from behind the golden speck. Suddenly, a colorful dagger appeared. The golden glow on it was as dazzling as a small sun, and it shrouded the roof of the car. Oh no! Tang En exclaimed secretly. He could not see, so naturally, he did not know where to attack. At this moment, an awe-inspiring pressure came from the front. Gritting his teeth, Tang En directly pushed all the sword glows forward. The roof of the car is only so big, let's see where you can hide, ding. Bang! In the golden glow, a pitch-black dagger suddenly bounced up. Then, a figure flew backward and fell on the street. After a few breaths, the outcome was decided. The golden glow disappeared. Ghostface stood on the roof of the car and reached out to catch the falling dagger. He flipped it left and right. Black iron meteorite? Humph. He swung his arm, and with a whoosh, it was nailed to Tang En's side. What's the meaning of this humiliation? Fight again? Tang En looked at Ghostface in surprise. However, Tang En no longer had the ability to fight. The continuous battles tonight had depleted over 2,000 points of his vital energy. In addition, he had used the chaotic flowers twice today. His hands were trembling uncontrollably. Tang En picked up the dagger and stood up. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to kill me? I don't think anyone would pay for my life. This was a question that Tang En had been puzzled since the start of the fight. He did not know many people in Liyan City. The only one he could be considered an enemy was Winston, and he had killed him. Did I say I want to kill you? I'm just teaching you a lesson. Don't go overboard. Overboard? Can you be more specific? Although Tang En was glad that his life was not in danger, he was still confused. Ghostface threw him a glance and did not reply. He leaped up, stepped on the roof tiles, and disappeared into the night. Tang En was dumbfounded. What the heck was going on? He had gotten into a fight for no reason, left behind a baffling sentence, and left. He must be crazy. Tang En commented on Ghostface decisively. Chapter 68. After the incident with Ghostface, Tang En finally returned to the backyard of the two-story attic successfully. This night, TSK was so exciting. Sure enough, being ordinary is the way to go. Sighing, Tang En held the reins of the horse and took out the key to open the back door. Buzz, what's that sound? Tang En was puzzled. In an instant, bang. A small explosion mixed with panicked voices came from the backyard. F***ck again. Tang En instantly ejected a dagger from his cuff, stepped on the frame of the carriage, and flipped over the wall. In the backyard, Lena sat on the ground with a pale face and covered her ears. In front of her, a small stove was overturned on the ground, and a small deformed pot was emitting black smoke. There was some black liquid with a pungent smell on the wall not far away. What is this? Lena, who was about to get up, saw a person with a dagger standing on the wall and screamed again, "Catch the thief!" Tang En staggered and almost fell from the wall. Hey, it's me. Mr. Arthur? Lena asked hesitantly. Didn't you see this nose this morning? Tang En flipped over the wall and stretched out his hand. Are you cooking? No. Lena took Tang En's hand and got up. She took out a book from behind her and said awkwardly, I read in this book today that if you heat the juice of the flaming grass and sour soil together, there will be a reaction. I was very curious. Coincidentally, there was a potted plant of the flaming grass here, so I tried it. As a result, General Outline of Alchemy. Tang En looked at the book in Lena's hand and asked in surprise, "Are you interested in alchemy?" "I don't know. I just think it's very interesting. Sour soil and the flaming grass, which are common things, have a reaction when they are heated together. It's incredible! Explosion. Interesting?" Tang En said in surprise. "No, the book said that there would be a beautiful blue flame." Lena looked at the book in distress. Then her eyes lit up and she said excitedly, "I know, it's because of the iron pot. Alchemy had a special burning device, so it would emit blue flames. I put it in an iron pot to heat it up, so it naturally exploded." Seeing Lena's excited expression, Tang En's heart suddenly moved as he said, "Since you are interested in this, I'll buy you an alchemy device tomorrow." Lena hurriedly waved her hand when she heard this. No need, no need. Mr. Arthur, I'm just playing with it to see the effect." It doesn't matter. Just treat it as a game." Tang En waved his hand indifferently. There was a reason why Tang En insisted on buying things for Lena, even though he had said yesterday that Lena could move around freely. But in the end, Lena still chose to stay. Obviously, she was worried about bringing trouble to him. For this, Tang En was naturally moved. Since Lena chose to stay, and it would be boring to read books every day, Tang En naturally didn't mind buying something for her to practice. But I heard from the book that alchemy devices are very expensive." "Haha, don't worry, I have plenty of money." Tang En, who had made a fortune today, patted his pocket with a look of wealth. "How much is this?" 3,000 gold coins. "Why don't you rob?" "Sir, robbery is illegal. This is a high-end product. If you are not satisfied, you can choose a lower grade." "How much is that?" 2,900 gold coins. "You did it on purpose." "What? Forget it, 3,000 will do." "Okay, sir. The total is 3,500 gold coins." What? How did it become 3,500 gold coins?" "Sir, it's like this. Because the alchemy process will always produce a lot of waste, poisonous gas, and so on, the city's government office stipulated that if you buy this alchemy device, you must buy a purification device. The purification device is 500 gold coins, so the total is 3,500 gold coins." Sir, do you still want to buy?" "Buy. Okay. Here are some basic materials that are necessary for alchemy. According to the weight, they are divided into 3 grades. The first grade is 500 gold coins, the second grade is 300 gold coins, and the third grade is 100 gold coins. Sir, which one do you choose?" The above was the scene that happened when Tang En bought the device in the alchemy shop. Because he promised Lena last night, Tang En excitedly came to buy the alchemy device at noon. Who knew that when he went to the shop and asked, the price of a full set of alchemy devices was a few thousand gold coins. It was really shocking. But Tang En had already made a promise, so naturally, he wouldn't go back on his words. After a while, Tang En walked out of the alchemy shop with a toothache expression. The purchase of the alchemy device cost him 4,200 gold coins. In the blink of an eye, he had spent more than half of the 5,000 gold coins that he had just received. Is this still alchemy? Robbery? Tang En looked back at the shop's signboard. Sooner or later, I'll find Jack and rob him. Because the alchemy device was quite large, the shop delivered it to their doorstep. When Tang En returned home with the shop's carriage, Lena was tidying up the backyard. They had decided last night to renovate the backyard into an alchemy room. Just when Tang En and Lena were busy in full swing, a few hundred meters away from their house, on the 3rd floor of the attic, there was a slovenly man looking in their direction. Of course, to be more precise, he was looking at their neighbor, Bess's backyard. At this time, Bess seemed to have just woken up. After exercising in the backyard, he began to take out his paintings inside and outside to dry them. As long as the weather was good, this was something he had to do every day. "Ha, Bose, I knew you would be here," a voice suddenly came from behind the slovenly man. Bose was not surprised. Without turning his head, he asked, "How is it, Bugnes? Did you find out?" "I found out. The news of the Aston family smuggling to the enemy country was spread by a group of hoodlums in a tavern in Southport. Those hoodlums are low-level members of the Golden Lion gang." Bugnes walked to Bose's side and looked at Bess's backyard. "It really is the Robert family." Bose's tone was as if he had expected it. "Yes, but what can we do about it? You know, 6 years ago, Ghostface assassinated the former mayor and Earl Robert took over. 5 years ago, Ghostface assassinated the Brotherhood's president, causing the Golden Lion gang to replace him and become one of the 3 major gangs in Lion City." Bose paused. "At that time, I suspected that this Bess was Ghostface." "Yes, at that time, including the recent few attacks, the Robert family was the beneficiary. We had no choice but to turn our attention to this matter. In terms of age, Ghostface should be around Bess's age." Bugnes sighed. "All the conditions are met, but Bess's strength is not enough. Strength can be hidden, but fighting aura can't be hidden. I've said it many times. We've also tested it a few times and even invited an Earth-rank warrior to appraise it. This Bess's cultivation is at the level of a beginner warrior," Bugnes said calmly. "Yes, fighting aura cannot be hidden. A high-level warrior's perception of a low-level warrior will not be wrong." Bose shook his head. "I've fought with Ghostface more than 10 times. His fighting aura should be at the peak of a high-level warrior. So, even if this Bess wants to do it, he has the will but not the power." "Yes, that's the truth, but my feeling—" Bose frowned. "My feeling is telling me that this Bess is very suspicious." "Your feeling was wrong last night. Cough, cough, that was an accident." Bose's face turned red. "Ha ha!" Bugnes laughed but did not say anything. What's that guy doing next door?" Bose narrowed his eyes. "That device is used for alchemy, right? TSK, so rich." Bugnes smacked his lips. The two of them stood in the attic for a while before Bose clapped his hands. "Let's go." Bugnes smiled. "You're not going to watch anymore?" "When I catch Ghostface, and it's this Bess, I'll make a flower out of his face." Recently, Lion City has not been peaceful. The Iron Blood Association controlled by Earl Blake's family is getting restless. I'm afraid that something will happen. Isn't that normal? The Aston family will definitely compromise. Only the Blake family is left. Won't they fight to the death? We won't be able to sleep peacefully for a while. Damn it. Chapter 69. In the lush forest, the ground was covered in layers of fallen leaves. Unknown birds were chirping in the distance, making the place even more tranquil. At this moment, a person who looked like a butler walked in the forest with his hands behind his back, stepping on the rotten leaf. He did not seem to have any purpose, looking like he was taking a stroll after a meal. Suddenly, a figure jumped up from the tree beside him. In the blink of an eye, the figure turned into 3 blood-red silhouettes and arrived in front of the housekeeper, ignoring the distance between them. Red light flashed between the eyebrows, throat, and heart. Such a terrifying speed, such a ruthless attack. It was really a classic assassination in the jungle. However, the butler did not think so. He shook his head lightly. He stretched out his right hand, seemingly slow but actually fast. A dagger suddenly appeared, ignoring the attack on the heart and eyebrows, and stabbed into the heart of the sneaky figure. Bang! The figure collapsed. Ah! An uncontrollable scream came from afar. Too many flaws, no good. The butler commented on the assassination. After a while, a figure with a pale face crawled out from the bushes and said angrily, "It's not bad to be able to train to this level in such a short time. It's only you, old butler. If it was anyone else, I would have succeeded." The ordinary-looking face with long and narrow eyes was Tang En. "If it was really me, do you think you would have been able to jump up just now?" The old butler said calmly. Tang En was speechless. The old butler spoke again. The skill, empty kill, requires an aura of mutual destruction. If you don't succeed, you'll die trying. You need to experience this well. Also, your body movement is still too weak. You can only create 3 blood shadows, which are easily seen through. Once the Great Mastery empty kill is used, the area Tenjong above the target will be filled with blood shadows, unstoppable. Empty kill. Learning requirement 2000 blood chi. Instant skill. The moment the target looks up, the Grim Reaper's scythe will descend. Cooldown time 3 minutes. Consumes 300 blood chi. Tang En's blood chi was initially 1830, but after the battle at Austin Castle, his blood chi soared to 2500, meeting the learning requirements of some skills. That night, he had inexplicably fought with Ghostface and suffered a crushing defeat. This triggered Tang En. His mission to find Ghastly Face's true identity had yet to be completed. He would definitely have to face Ghastly Face again in the future. If this happened every time, what was the point of looking for him? Old butler, other than Void Kill, what other skills can I learn? Tang En asked eagerly. Don't bite off more than you can chew. If you could master chaotic flowers, you wouldn't have been defeated in one move. Ahem. Tang En's face turned red. He smiled awkwardly and said, I just started practicing. I can't compete with him in terms of quality, but we can use quantity to crush him. The old butler sighed. Forget it, there's no harm in telling you. You won't be able to learn this skill for the time being. It's the killing intent in the status skill tree. Killing intent. Learning requirement. 2000 blood chi points. The killer's will, the target's nightmare. Can be used to intimidate and track. Consumes 10 blood chi per second. Killing intent. Tang En muttered, then rolled his eyes. Can't learn it? Old butler, don't look down on me, all right? The old butler ignored Tang En's words. Actually, you've seen killing intent before. Tang En asked in surprise. When? When you first met Ghastly Face last night, the icy aura that enveloped you was killing intent. Tang En instantly recalled the feeling of falling into an ice cave that night. He nodded in understanding. How do I practice this? Hurry up and teach me. The old butler shook his head. You'll have to figure this out yourself. Actually, if you kill enough people, you'll naturally understand this feeling. What's this? Tang En was dumbfounded. Please, at least give me a hint. Hint? That works too. If you're willing, I can release killing intent and let you experience it yourself. Tang En was overjoyed. He quickly said, I'm willing, of course I'm willing. Are you sure? I'm sure. As you wish. The old butler glanced at him. Boom! Tang En was stunned. His body fell rapidly as if he was falling into an abyss. Before he could exclaim, the scene changed instantly. There were mountains of corpses and seas of blood in front of him. It was a massacre. Tang En found himself in a pool of blood. The viscous blood reached his lips, and the smell of blood lingered around his nose. Wu Tang En struggled with all his might, but he couldn't move an inch. In the blink of an eye, the pool of blood completely submerged him. Bang! Something seemed to break in his mind. Everything before him was pitch black. Tang En, who was standing outside in a daze, lost all the light in his eyes. Bang! His body collapsed. A moment later, not far away, his body gathered again. Tang En stood there in a daze for about a quarter of an hour. Phew! He let out a long sigh. He looked at the old butler, who was still indifferent, with a complicated expression. You win. You did it on purpose. I'm not that bored. With that, the old butler turned and left. Continue with your practice. The next morning, Tang En got up groggily. He didn't sleep well last night. As soon as he closed his eyes, there were mountains of corpses and seas of blood in front of him. Men, women, the elderly, children. All kinds of tragic deaths appeared in his mind. He staggered down the stairs. The hall was empty. When he opened the back door, He saw that the courtyard had been divided into two. Most of the left side had been built into a room for alchemy. Lena was washing clothes in the open space on the right side. When she heard the door open, Lena turned around. "Good morning. Didn't sleep well last night? You don't look too good." "Yes, I'm fine. It would be strange if he could sleep." "Old butler, you must have done it on purpose." "Are you sure?" "Yes." Tang En suddenly shivered and woke up in an instant. "Yes, I'm sure." F***ck. He was almost traumatized by the old housekeeper. Every time the old housekeeper wanted to do something to Tang En, he would simply say, "Are you sure?" And Tang En would just nod his head foolishly every time. "Hey, are these my clothes?" Lena tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Yes, I saw them in the carriage, so I washed them for you." Thank you." Tang En scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "It's nothing." Lena smiled and turned around. She picked up a light-colored fluffy dress and washed it. It was the end of autumn and the beginning of winter. The water in the well was very cold. Lena's hands had turned red. "It's so inconvenient without a washing machine," Tang En muttered. Lena tilted her head. "Washing machine? What's that?" It's a machine that automatically washes clothes." "Automatically washes clothes? Is that okay?" Seeing that Lena was interested, Tang En simply sat down on the steps and gestured. "You see, washing clothes by hand means rubbing up and down, left and right. But if we have a bucket, well, it's best that the bucket is not too heavy. Put a pulsator at the bottom of it, then put the clothes, water, and things to remove stains in. Finally, use a power system that can keep rotating to drive the pulsator, so that the clothes and water inside are mixed in all directions. This way, the stains will be removed. Do you understand?" "What's a pulsator?" The winter sun gradually rose. It was warm and had a magical power that made people unable to help but fall asleep. A man from the modern world was describing the magical power of modern machines to a woman from another world on the steps of his backyard. The woman listened very attentively and raised her hand to ask some questions from time to time. The man from the modern world also had a smattering of knowledge, so he kept gesturing the appearance of the machine, its functions, and so on. A weak butterfly began to slowly flap its wings. Little did it know that it was brewing a storm in the distance. P.S. There are two things. 1. Bowing to thank book friends Otaku and Moju for their tips. Well, there's also book friend Bosfius review and update tickets. Raccoon cupped his paws and thanked again. 2. Damn, I marked the chapter name wrongly. Chapter 56 is written as Chapter 57. Note, it's just the number that's wrong. The content is correct. Forgive Raccoon, who rarely passed math since young Carrot. Chapter 70. Monday, Lian City's City Lord Manor Conference Hall. At this time, there were many people with big bellies and luxurious clothes gathered here. Today was a government meeting, so some nobles and politicians would attend. With the arrival of City Lord Count Robert, the meeting officially began. Request for funds, report on work, repair of the city walls. These meetings were held every week, so if nothing unexpected happened, it was undoubtedly very boring. Other than a few people who were constantly reporting, most of the nobles and politicians had already habitually turned on their sleep mode. At this time, Bevan stood up and criticized the government office for being too slow, and for not being able to start construction on the pier. The head of the government office tried his best to pull his fat body up from the chair. Then, he began to narrate all kinds of reasons in a cadence, such as there were too many unruly people, the request to increase the demolition fee, the city construction department not cooperating, and the work could not be carried out. He rambled on and on for a long time, and finally came to a conclusion. Anyway, it was not the government office's fault. The city construction department director was unhappy. He was just about to request for funds to support his 13th lover, but who would have thought that this guy would come out of nowhere? Thus, he stood up and began to complain, saying that the government office was stuck with the funds and did not give out the funds, saying that the city construction department's facilities were old and needed money urgently for repairs. Thus, the two directors of the government office and the city construction department started to curse at each other, escalating from a war of words to a personal attack, and finally, the city construction department director threw a boot over, escalating into a fight. The government office director was too fat, and could not bend over to take off his shoe, so he threw the cup on the table at him. His aim was not good, and the cup did not hit the target, but the tea inside affected many people. Thus, the fight escalated from a one-on-one fight to a group fight. The nobles and celebrities at the side were delighted when they saw this. Oh, there was a show to watch. Thus, they immediately switched from sleep mode to heckling mode. For a moment, the conference hall was bustling with noise. As for Bevan, who had first raised the issue, he sat down with a livid expression. This group of pigs. This fight was finally stopped by Count Robert, who gave the two directors who started the incident 50 slaps each, ordering them to quickly start the construction of the pier. The conference hall returned to normal, and the meeting resumed. The nobles who had been watching the show saw that it was over, so they went back to sleep mode until the meeting was about to end. Just as these nobles wiped their saliva and tidied up their clothes, waiting for the host to announce the end of the meeting, they stood up and left. Count Austin, who had been sitting silently with a gloomy expression, stood up. There's something else? The nobles sat back down in confusion. Although everyone was very disdainful of this country bumpkin pirate noble, he was still the deputy city lord after all. He still had to show some respect. Count Austin's words were very brief. I hereby announce that the Austin family will give up the ownership of the new pier to the Robert family. With that, Count Austin left the government office with a dark expression. Yo, that's really short. The nobles were overjoyed. It seemed that this uncultured pirate still had his redeeming qualities. At least he could not make up so many words. Wait, what did he just say? Give up the ownership of the new pier? Boom. When most of the people reacted, the hall was in an uproar. No one dared to believe their own ears. A dock? What was that? That was an assembly line that produced gold coins. The Aston family actually gave it up just like that. Even if they were uncultured, they weren't fools. Give it to the Robert family. At this moment, someone remembered the second half of Count Austin's words. Immediately, all the nobles shifted their gazes upwards. Originally, there were 4 counts sitting there. Now that Count Austin had left, there were only 3 left. The person involved, Count Robert, seemed rather calm. At this moment, he raised his teacup and slowly sipped his tea. Count Matthew's expression was first one of shock, then it slowly turned into one of indescribable complexity. As for Count Blake, he did not even try to hide his anger. Meeting adjourned. Knock. Count Robert placed his teacup on the table and stood up to leave. Humph. Count Blake snorted coldly and left with a flick of his sleeves. Sigh, let's all disperse. Count Matthews sighed softly and walked out of the meeting hall. The nobles looked at each other. No one had expected such shocking news to come out at the end of the meeting. Everyone had complicated expressions and dispersed while discussing amongst themselves. Of course, not all nobles were like that. At least, Bevan, Dirk, and the other heads of the 5 families were all delighted. Lord Bevan's plan is truly flawless. It's truly admirable, Viscount Dirk praised. Bevan shook his head and chuckled, hee, it's the result of everyone's concerted efforts. Bevan merely came up with some ideas. Lord Bevan, you're too humble. That's right. Bevan cupped his hands, everyone. Yes, there's still the Blake family that has yet to be conquered. It won't be too late to praise Bevan after everything is done. With Lord Bevan's strategy, wouldn't the Blake family be captured without a fight? Haha, that's reasonable. Lord Bevan, tell us, what should we do? Very simple. Bevan clenched his fist and extended it. Just attack. Attack? Bevan nodded. That's right, there's a way to use troops. When we were weak, we could use some strange moves to achieve unexpected results, but it was inevitably too risky. Now that we're strong, we naturally have to attack and crush them, not giving them a chance to breathe. That's right. That's how it should be. Then when do we attack? The Blake family is already on guard, so the sooner the better. Yes, tonight. Bevan said decisively as he changed his fist into a palm strike. Okay. The plan was set, and success was right in front of them. The 5 Viscounts naturally didn't dare to delay and hurried back to prepare. At this moment, Grey walked into the meeting hall. Young Master Bevan, that Earl Austen has already left. Do you think we should? Haha, let's go, it's not good to keep them waiting. Bevan rubbed his hands. This isn't the demeanor of a victor. More than 5 kilometers to the east of the Eastern City District, there was a hunting park for nobles to pass time. A carriage with a golden lion head symbol drove out of the meeting hall in the city and arrived here. Bevan saw Earl Austen holding a crossbow in the south of the hunting park. Earl Austen, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. Bevan bowed. Earl Austen handed the crossbow to the butler beside him and glanced at Bevan. The younger generation will surpass us in time. I didn't think that my Austen family, which had dominated the sea, would fall at your hands after coming to a small city in the south. Earl Austen, actually, say no more. The winner takes all. Give it to me. Bevan shook his head and gave a look behind him. Grey took a step forward, bowed, and handed the 3 pages to Count Austen. Receiving the 3 pages, Earl Austen furrowed his brows and said angrily in a low voice, "What do you mean by this?" Bevan blinked in confusion and asked in surprise, "What do you mean by what do you mean?" Earl Austen's eyes flashed fiercely. "Stop pretending. I have an account book and you're giving me 3 pages? Could it be that your Robert family still wants my family's old doc? An account book?" Bevan and Grey looked at each other and cried out in surprise. "Oh, you're acting more and more like it. That means you don't plan on returning the battle energy cultivation method?" Battle energy cultivation method. Bevan opened his mouth and looked woodenly at the furious Earl Austen. Good. Good. Ha. Earl Austen was so angry that he started laughing. "You're really something, playing this game with me. Good, then let's fight to the death." Bevan barely recovered from his shock and hurriedly said, "Earl Austen, there's a misunderstanding here. We asked a thief to steal the account book, and that thief only gave us 3 pages. Who would believe that?" After arguing for a while, Earl Austen left angrily with the 2 pages. "Search the entire city according to these 2 sketches." Earl Austen handed the 2 pieces of paper to the butler with a dark expression. Although it was a bit blurry, it was still possible to see that it was Tang An and Jack's disguised faces from the 2 sketches. Tang An's aquiline nose was especially eye-catching. "Sir, do you believe what they said?" the butler asked as he took the paper. "Believe my ass." Earl Austen gritted his teeth. "Go to the Thief Union and post another assassination mission. I want to buy Bevan's life for 10,000 gold coins." Chapter 71. Raccoon has created a group, 2788199949. You can join if you're free. Although it's already over yesterday, I still need to mark it as the 3rd watch because Raccoon is still awake. Carrot, please add, please recommend. The weather at the end of autumn and the beginning of winter was abnormal. The sun was shining brightly in the morning, but gray clouds covered the city in the afternoon. It was going to rain heavily soon. F***ck, do we have to be so unlucky? We were fine when we left. Tang An mumbled as he continued to lean against the corner of the wall and looked at the square building in front of him. Although the style of the building was rigid, It gave off a solemn feeling under the contrast of the black stone material. It gave people a sense of security. Perhaps that was the intention of the designer, as this was the police station of Lian City. Of course, Tang En was not here to turn himself in. In fact, he was here to investigate. If it was not for the letter from the mysterious person, he would have been here a few days ago. The person in Lian City who knew Grimace the best was undoubtedly Bose. He had been studying Grimace for many years. Although he had not caught him, he must have collected a lot of relevant information. And this information was exactly what Tang En needed. His understanding of Grimace was still too poor. He had no idea where to start looking for his real identity. After thinking about it, Tang En had no choice but to turn his attention to Bose. Going up and asking directly was definitely out of the question. Other than rewarding him with a domineering chop of fighting energy, Bose would not think of anything else. Tang En's goal was Bose's office, where there should be what he was looking for. If a mouse wanted to wander into a cat's nest, it would be seeking death if it did not investigate carefully. Tang En had been here for a while, but he had not found anything. He had not even met Bose yet. However, he was not in a hurry. Ever since he was stopped at the Flame Dragon Union, Tang En was very patient in his preparations. Tang En was surprised to see a troop of police cavalry in bronze armor rushing out of the main door and heading south. What was going on? How many batches was this, however? Tang En was no longer surprised by this situation. This was because during the 2 hours that he continued to wait, more than 10 teams of garrison cavalry rushed out. On average, there was a team every 10 minutes. Every time, the direction was not fixed. There were all sorts of directions. The security in this world isn't that great. While he was sighing with emotion, Tang En suddenly raised his head. There was a trace of coldness on his face. Gradually, the light rain began to float. If I had known, I would have driven the carriage out. Tang En grumbled, then glanced at the police station. Forget it, let's stop here for today. Tang En did not plan to sneak into the police station today. Seeing that it was going to rain, he naturally had to retreat. Braving the drizzle, Tang En quickly walked towards the southwest. However, after walking 2 streets, he realized that something was wrong. Based on the traffic in Lian City, even if it was raining, there should still be people coming and going on this main road. Why is this place so deserted? There was not even a single person on the street. Just as Tang En was puzzled, a group of strong men dressed in red came from the alley. They were all dressed in red and had the words, "I am a hoodlum," carved on their faces. When the 2 sides met, the group of people dressed in red looked over. Then, the person in front waved his hand. The one in black, kill him. Zing, zing, zing. The sound of swords being unsheathed could be heard. Kill. The group of people dressed in red waved their snow-white swords and charged over. Tang En turned his head and looked behind him, then looked at both sides. Black? Who is it? Isn't it just me? F***ck. Tang En hurriedly waved his hand. You have the wrong person. I'm just passing by. The man in red who was charging at the front sized up Tang En. Black clothes and black pants. How can it be so coincidental? Kill him. F***ck. Tang En gloomily turned around and ran. What kind of world is this? Is it wrong to wear black clothes and black pants? Perhaps it was the subtle influence of the system, but Tang En was now more and more fond of the inconspicuous black and gray. Who knew that one day, he would be unjustly attacked because of this and be hunted down on the street? You're courting death. Don't blame me. Tang En looked at the group of men in red who were chasing after him. His eyes flashed coldly, and he turned around and ran into the alley. The man in red in front shouted excitedly, "Haha, that's a dead end. Brothers, go in and kill him." Charge. Shouting the slogan, a group of 10 or so burly men rushed into the alley, scrambling to be the first. The alley was not deep, only about 10 feet. At this time, Tang-en turned around and stood still. "Ha, run. Why aren't you running? Let me see if you can run again." Tang-en raised his head and looked at the sky. The rain seemed to be getting heavier. F***ck, I'm talking to you. Didn't you hear me? The man in red who was ignored was very dissatisfied. He took a few steps forward and scratched the wall with his long knife from time to time, trying to create a somewhat terrifying atmosphere. "Sorry, I'm in a hurry. WH." The man in red only felt a chill on his neck. Tang-en passed by him like a ghost and pounced on the group of men behind him. Plop! Bang! Screams, sounds of bodies falling, and the sound of long knives falling. In just a few seconds, everything returned to silence. Huff, huff. A man in red fell behind. Seeing that the situation was not good, he quickly turned around and ran. Hearing that there were no more sounds behind him, his scalp became even more numb. Fortunately, the exit was in front of him. The man in red stepped out of the alley and was immediately overjoyed. But before he could take out his other leg, the back of his collar was grabbed and lifted up. His figure disappeared in the alley. "Ah, help! Spare!" The sound disappeared and Tang-en appeared in the alley. "Brothers in black, chop!" Tang-en, who had just walked out of the alley, turned his head in surprise and saw a group of men in red rushing over. "Damn, is there an end to it?" Tang-en quickly retreated into the alley, sprinted a few steps, kicked a few times on the wall, and flipped over the wall. "Ah!" The man in red who ran over first rushed into the alley and paused. More than 10 corpses were lying on the ground, and the short wall was covered in blood. The drizzle quickly turned into red water droplets and slid down the wall. The people who came in later saw this scene and couldn't help but fall silent. Then, "Damn it, call someone to block him! Chop him to death and avenge our brothers! I want to chop him to pieces!" The group of men in red suddenly exploded and began to clamor and call the people around to surround him. Tang-en ran quickly in the rain. These few streets were already in complete chaos. From time to time, he could see burly men in black and red fighting. Screams and shouts of killing could be heard incessantly. "It's him, surround him!" Whoosh! Tang-en suddenly ran out in a Z shape, flicked his dagger, and instantly drew a red line. The group of people in front suddenly fell over, and most of them covered their wrists and rolled on the ground. Breakthrough! Motherf ****. Get more people and surround this area for me. Tang-en, who was galloping, suddenly turned around and accelerated. Like an arrow leaving the bow, he pounced on the middle-aged man in red who seemed to be the commander. Ding, ding, chi, chi, chi. After a short exchange, the middle-aged man in red's defense was broken, and more than a dozen dagger shadows disappeared from his body. Bang! The middle-aged man, who was constantly spurting blood, fell on his back. Twain rode away, leaving behind a trail of dust. Hiss! The surrounding men in red gasped. Who was this? He came and went freely in the crowd, taking the commander's head as if he was taking something out of his pocket. It was really terrifying. Just as Tang-en was dashing left and right in the rain, killing in all directions, Lena was in the house, studying the washing machine on the blueprint, lost in thought. It's best to use green feather wood as the material of the wooden barrel is light enough to be carried. The pulsating wheel can be made from the bones of the purling. Well, it's best to use the breastbone. How to solve the power system? Drip, drip, drip. Lena looked up in surprise and saw a lot of raindrops falling from the window. On my clothes. With a scream, Lena rushed out of the house. The clothes hanging in the backyard were mostly wet, and Lena hurriedly took them off one by one. Looking at the light-colored fluffy dress in front of her, Lena's eyes showed a trace of complexity. She found it in Mr. Arthur's carriage when she was tidying things up. It was a woman's evening dress. The fabric was of high quality and expensive, so it should be a noble's clothing. Is it Mr. Arthur's sweetheart's? Lena's heart suddenly flashed with a trace of sadness. Quickly shaking her head, Lena picked up the clothes and walked home. Lena, don't think too much. Chapter 72. The chaos on the street was still ongoing. The gradually increasing raindrops could not extinguish the fiery momentum of the two sides. However, there were some changes in the offensive and defensive side. At first, the Red Coat Gang was strong and chased after the men in black who were alone. Now, the Black Coat Gang reacted and rushed over with a large number of fresh troops. The strength of both sides was almost equal and the situation was in a stalemate. Of course, this had little to do with Tang En. He was still chased by a large group of Red Coat Gang. In fact, if one looked carefully, one could see that Tang En's outfit was different from the men in black. The men in the Black Coat Gang were all wearing close-fitting short gowns that were good for close combat, while Tang En was wearing a medium cotton shirt. Some of the men chasing after him might have noticed this, but now that they were all killed by Tang En, they naturally would not say something like, "Sorry, I mistook you for someone else, let's go." "Stop, I'll kill you if you keep running." "You can't run after offending our Iron Blood Association." "Damn it, don't run." The men chasing behind him were depressed. "You slashed me once, I slashed you once. At most, you were good at fighting. You slashed people 7 or 8 times, they slashed you once. This was called street fighting. But now, you slashed someone once and ran, then suddenly slashed again and ran again. You don't pay attention, you don't have the spirit of the underworld at all." Tang En was not in a good mood at this time. An assassin walking on the street was being chased by hooligans just because he was wearing black. Damn it, is there still law? Is there still law? Moreover, they chased him across 2 streets, and these 2 streets were densely packed with fighting. As a result, there were more and more people chasing and slashing him. This world is really bad. Those men in black who thought that Tang En was on their side wanted to help, but when they saw the situation behind him, they hurriedly moved to the side. Damn it, what kind of thing did this brother do to anger the heavens? He dared to be chased by hundreds of people. Beep, beep. Seeing that Tang En was about to run to the end of the 3rd street, a mournful whistle suddenly sounded. Thud, 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 thud. In the distance, a few teams of garrison cavaliers stepped on the water and patted their horses to rush over. Phew! Tang En heaved a long sigh of relief. He flicked his wrist and hid the dagger. Then, he stuck close to the side of the road and prepared to leave. "Hey, the one in black, don't run. I'm talking to you. Why are you leaving?" Tang En turned his head with a wooden expression and saw a garrison cavalryman dismount from his horse in the heavy rain, walking quickly towards him with a chain in his hand. Inhale, exhale, Tang En took a deep breath and stepped on the water splashing on the ground. His figure broke through the rain like a thunder and arrived in front of the cavalry in an instant. Whoosh! The cavalryman was startled and subconsciously swung the chain in his hand. Tang En grabbed the chain and pulled. The cavalryman stumbled forward a few steps and arrived in front of Tang En. Before the cavalryman could react, Twain shook the chain and wrapped it around the cavalryman's neck. Then, he dragged him into the alley next to him. Thump, thump. "Is it against the law to wear black?" Thump, thump. "Can't King wear black?" Thump, thump. "There are so many cheese in black on the street. Why me?" "Hey, what are you doing?" Someone. Beat. A garrison cavalier at the entrance of the alley was shocked when he saw the situation inside. He quickly called for backup. Throwing the chain aside, the unlucky cavalryman fell to the ground with a thud. Tang En cleaned the blood on his fist on the cavalryman's pant armor. Then, he pushed off the wall and flipped over the top of the wall. Although the garrison cavaliers had horses, they were too few in number. They couldn't form an encirclement. So, they could only watch as Tang En disappeared into the rain. This afternoon, the streets of Liyan City were in a complete mess. The garrison hall was like a market. There were many people going in and out. In the hall, A brawny man who didn't care about his appearance was waving his hand and giving orders. You there, there's a fight at South Harbor Pier 25. Bring a group of cavalrymen to take a look. You, it's you. Pass down my orders. If you want to catch more people, just catch the leaders. Don't send any scum to the garrison hall. Can't you see that it's almost full? Also, don't bring in any injured ones. I don't care if they die. You! What are you doing? Chief, one of our brothers is injured. Bose stepped forward and identified him. He asked uncertainly, Who is this? This is Bill, sir. Ah. Bose opened his mouth. Looking at the cavalryman whose face was swollen like a pig's head on the stretcher, he suddenly became furious. Damn it, how dare you hit the garrison cavaliers? How dare you? Pass down my orders. If you catch any scum again, punch them in the face. Didn't you hear me? Bose roared. Yes. The cavalryman quivered. He stood straight and placed his fist on his chest as he made a standard cavalry salute. Plop. That cavalryman was originally carrying one end of the stretcher. Now that he saluted out of reflex, the unlucky cavalryman in his hand naturally fell to the ground. Immediately, a horrifying scream was heard. Bose turned his head and waved his hand as he couldn't bear to watch. Hurry up and send him to the infirmary. Yes. A few cavalrymen lifted the stretcher and left dejectedly. Bose, the situation isn't good. It's getting out of control. A vigorous middle-aged man walked in through the door. That won't happen, Bugnes. The Iron Blood Association is relying on the element of surprise. When the aristocratic alliance comes back to their senses, the two sides will naturally be in a deadlock. That makes sense. Bugnes nodded. He then chuckled and said, I really didn't think that Earl Blake would be so decisive. He just finished a meeting in the morning and actually made his move in the afternoon. Yes, the methods of these old fellows can't be underestimated. They were originally at an absolute disadvantage, but after this sudden attack, they gained a lot of advantages. Bose smacked his lips and said, Which side do you favor? What does it have to do with me? If I have to choose, I still favor the aristocratic alliance. They have already established their momentum. The Blake family's sneak attack is only a matter of time. It doesn't have much significance. Bose hesitated for a bit before giving his choice. I think so too. The Robert family is going to make a killing this time. Bugnes sighed with emotion. Even if they make a killing, they won't give us any money. Bose laughed loudly and then said, Let's study how to deal with the chaos that will happen in the next few days. Right. Where's the chief? How come I haven't seen him since the meeting? Is there a need to ask? That old fox must have fallen ill. Damn, his eyesight is pretty good. He knew something was going to happen today. P.S. Bowing to thank the readers, JHT 121 and Engstone for their tips. My hands were cheap. It was clearly 2,400 words, but after deleting, it became 1,900 words. I had no choice but to add another paragraph. Can you see which paragraph in this chapter is fake? Chidian.com welcomes readers to visit and read our latest, fastest, and hottest serialized works on Chidian Originals. Chapter 73. The heavy rain lasted for 3 days. It was like the beginning of winter as the temperature in Liyan City plummeted. For the past few days, other than driving the carriage and bringing Lena out to buy some alchemy items, Tang En had been training his skills in the system. What stopped Tang En from going out was not only the heavy rain, but also the chaotic environment in Liyan City. According to Alan, the East and North districts were better. There were occasional conflicts in the West district, but at the South Harbor, there were fights happening almost all the time. With the chaos in the city, the police station would definitely be working around the clock. Therefore, Tang En's plan to sneak in had to be put aside for the time being. Knock, 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 a series of hurried knocks on the door. Tang En opened the door with sleepy eyes. He had been training in the system for a long time last night. I did it, I did it. Lena jumped excitedly outside the door. What? The washing machine, I got the washing machine out. Not bad, continue. What? The washing machine. Tang En was shocked when he came back to his senses. Yes, follow me. Lena pulled Tang En down the stairs. At this moment, on the right side of the backyard, there were a few strange-looking things. There was a double-layered wooden bucket, a square box with a handle, and a yellow rope-like thing connecting the two. This is a washing machine? Tang En was confused. I've seen pulsating wheels, rollers, stirrers. What is this? Lena nodded and said firmly, That's right. Tang En took a few steps forward. All right, this wooden bucket was the inner cylinder of the washing machine. This is the pulsating wheel you were talking about. Why do I feel like it's a bone? It's a bone. This is the breastbone of a purling. It's very similar to the pulsating wheel you were talking about, Lena said as if it was a matter of fact. Okay, then this is the gear you were talking about. Gears. Tang En looked at the rows of things at the bottom of the barrel and was shocked. These are teeth, right? That's right. These are the teeth of the sharp-beaked beast. They just so happen to meet the requirements of gear. Tang En sweated profusely. F*ck, this is really a real tooth wheel. What about this? Tang En pointed at the square box with a handle. This is the power unit. Lena raised her head and said proudly, I flipped through a lot of books before I thought of it. There were 2 fixed gravitational spheres inside. This gravity ball was the result of an alchemist's failed experiment. It was mainly for children to play with, because as long as the two are stirred together, they will have a strong attraction to each other. Therefore, I only need to turn the handle for a moment to stir them and give them a push force. These 2 small balls will attract each other and drive the gears inside to operate automatically. Lena said excitedly in one breath. She couldn't help but pause for a moment before continuing. Then, through this bull tendon. Oh, it should be the caterpillar, it drives the gears under the bucket, and the clothes can be automatically washed. Gravity sphere? Bull tendon? Teeth. Tang En touched his forehead and felt a little confused for a moment. Have you tried this thing before? Lena shook her head. No, I just finished and went to call you. Then try it. Practice is the only standard to test whether an item is successful or not. Tang En waved his hand. For a moment, he felt a sense of mission to promote the advancement of technology in this world. Okay, I'll go get some clothes. Lena trotted into the house. No, just this one. Tang En casually took off his black robe and threw it into the wooden bucket. Then, he added some water into it. Who will start it? You do it. After all, this is your first alchemy item. Tang En smiled. Okay. Lena nodded solemnly and put her hand on the handle. She took a deep breath and turned it. Clang, 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 clang. Why does it feel like driving a train? Tang En listened to the sound coming from the small box and couldn't help but think to himself. After about 3 minutes, the clang sound became faster and faster. The bull tendon track also began to turn slowly. So far, everything was going smoothly. Lena suddenly let go of her hand and took a step back. The two watched as the track began to slow down. The sound of water faintly came from the wooden bucket. Apparently, it had begun to stir. Lena excitedly grabbed Tang En's arm and looked at the item that took her 3 days and 3 nights to make with a sense of accomplishment. Clang, 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 clang. The sound became faster and faster. The track sped up and water splashed out from the wooden bucket. Why does it feel like something is wrong? Tang En looked at the wooden bucket thoughtfully. Buzz. At this time, the rotating wooden bucket also began to make sound. Clang, 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 buzz, 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 buzz. This thing is not normal. Why don't we stop first? Tang En looked at the rapidly rotating wooden bucket and his eyelids twitched. He said worriedly. Lena covered her mouth and screamed. What's wrong? Lena looked sad. I was thinking about how to make it spin and forgot how to make it stop. What? Tang En was shocked. Boom! At this moment, the rapidly spinning barrel suddenly exploded, and all the parts scattered in all directions. Fall. Tang En reacted quickly. He grabbed Lena's shoulder and threw her behind him. Chaotic flower. The black dagger flashed red and a beautiful flower of blood appeared. However, before it could form, it was forcefully pushed forward by Tang En. Hiss, 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 ding, ding, ding. Some of the granular things were blocked by the layers of blade light and were knocked away. Before Tang En could breathe a sigh of relief, his vision suddenly turned black and a strong wind blew. He subconsciously formed a cross in front of his body. Bang! He felt pain in his hand and his body flew into the air and hit the wall of the house. Everything happened in an instant. When Lena came back to her senses, she saw that the small courtyard was already in a mess. The ground and walls were full of the remains of her first alchemy item. Mr. Arthur, how are you? Where are you hurt? I'm fine. Tang En groaned and stood up. With a clang, he threw away the half of the ripple wheel that caused him to hit the wall. When he was about to put away the dagger, his heart skipped a beat. He looked down and saw a white tooth in the hole of the black dagger. Damn, this is ridiculous. Tang En was sweating profusely. Fortunately, he had activated chaotic flower in advance. Otherwise, with the impact of the explosion and the penetrating power of the sharp tooth, he would have been a blood sacrifice for Lena's first alchemy item. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Lena's face was pale. Looking at Tang En's bruised arm, she was full of self-blame. It's okay. Inventions have to fail sometimes. Tang En comforted her and then patted his thigh. I know. I'm also responsible. I forgot to tell you that the washing machine needs to be rotated in a positive direction. No wonder when he saw the wooden barrel spinning just now, he felt strange. Positive direction? Yes, you can only wash the stains by mixing it in a positive direction. If you rotate it in a positive direction. Tang En patted Lena's shoulder. Your direction is right. At least you have invented the washing machine's dehydration function in advance. Lena was stunned. Mr. Arthur, where are you going? To apply medicine. Tang En's shoulders drooped weakly. Damn, it hurts. Lena stuck out her tongue. Let me help you. I just made a beginner's wound medicine a few days ago. Don't. Tang En was shocked. I have medicine in my room. Use mine, use mine. Bowing to thank the readers Grim Reaper Sirius and Birdie Can Fly for their tips. Well, Raccoon has a friend who is Raccoon's Guide. If you are interested in science fiction, you can read his book, Dark Magic Swordsman of the Apocalypse. Chapter 74. Noon. The Robert clan's mansion. Bevan rushed out of his study. The attic was in picturesque disorder, the weathered bluestone floor, and the orderly guards and servants. This is the clan. Every time Bevan saw this place, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Although it was said that nobles were destined by the heavens, and that as long as the first generation laid down the foundation, the later generations only needed to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor, it was truly difficult to understand. However, only those who were involved in it would know how difficult it was. Destruction was always easier than construction. Developing and strengthening a family might require the efforts of several generations, but destroying a family was just an insignificant wave. Thinking of this, Bevan began to hate that ridiculous older brother of his. As the eldest son, and living in this sort of environment, instead of worrying about the clan, he ran off to paint. How ridiculous! But within this hatred, Bevan knew that he was also somewhat happy. Ever since he was a child, He had always been interested in managing various things. If it wasn't for his older brother, he probably would have been like those second-generation nobles who only knew how to eat, drink, and play. He probably wouldn't have had the chance to be put in an important position by his father. While thinking, Bevan arrived at an old building. This was the center of the clan, where every generation's patriarch worked. Bevan stared at the bronze door with a fiery gaze, then let out a long sigh and walked in. One day, I'll be sitting in here. The door to the patriarch's office wasn't closed. When Bevan walked in, Count Robert was drinking tea and resting. Lord Father. Bevan bowed respectfully. Sit. Count Robert waved his hand, pointing at the teacup on the table. Drink some tea. Bevan picked up the teacup and sat down calmly. You don't like it? This is Wuchi tea. It really is a bit bland. Count Robert chuckled. Only us old fellows like it. No, it's not bad to drink it occasionally. Bevan picked up the teacup. Count Robert pressed down on the teacup. If you don't like it, don't drink it. You can't force yourself to. Just like us old fellows do things slowly and carefully, we always strive for stability. We can't compare to you guys who come with such vigor. This time, I let you handle the affairs of the docks. You've already proven your ability. In a short month, you've brought glory and benefits to the Robert clan. You are an outstanding leader who brings glory to the clan. Bevan's heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly got up. Thank you, Lord Father, for your praise. Count Robert nodded and continued, but Lion City is the foundation of our family. It's been a bit chaotic these few days. Father, Lion City will regain its peace tomorrow? Baywin said resolutely. That's good. In the attic, Lena stood by the stairs in a woolen blended dress. Mr. Arthur, are you ready? Not yet, I'm almost done, but I've been waiting for half an hour. A middle-aged man with a serious expression pushed open the door and walked out. He rolled his eyes in a manner that did not match his temperament. You have to understand how difficult it is for a killer to put on makeup. Wow. Lena blinked and opened her mouth in surprise. Are we going to act as father and daughter? Lena giggled and straddled Tang En's arms. Now we'll look more alike. The corner of Tang En's mouth twitched. Meddlesome. Perhaps it was because she was finally living the life she wanted. Lena's natural liveliness was constantly released. So even though she was slightly older than Tang En, from the outside, Tang En looked more mature. Because Lena had a new idea about the structure of the washing machine, Tang En agreed to drive Lena to the alchemy shop after dinner. It was not that he did not trust Lena and insisted on following her. But because of the recent chaotic situation, Tang En did not wear black clothes when he went out to avoid trouble. Tang En was now familiar with the alchemy shop. The carriage trotted all the way and arrived at the entrance of an alchemy shop in the west of the city. Elena? Tang En and the others had just gotten off the carriage when they heard a surprised voice. Lena turned her head in surprise and suddenly shouted in surprise, Aunt Susan! On the side of the road, a woman with a round body and exaggerated foundation suddenly walked over quickly. Lena, where have you been recently? I've been to the treatment center a few times, but I couldn't find you. I have something to do. Aunt Susan, why are you looking for me? Lena grabbed Aunt Susan's hand and said. Aunt Susan's voice was loud. What's the matter? Didn't I tell you last time that Linha Street is going to be demolished? Your small house can be compensated with at least 4 or 5 gold coins. Hurry up and go back with me to go through the procedures. Oh, but I can't today. I'll go tomorrow. Lena looked back at Tang En and said. Aunt Susan looked suspiciously at Tang En and pulled Lena aside. Who is this? Lena hesitated. She wasn't completely joking when she said that she wanted to act as father and daughter. At least in the eyes of people who didn't know them, they really looked like a pair of father and daughter. But of course, this couldn't be said to Aunt Susan. Lena had lived with Aunt Susan since she was a child. Aunt Susan naturally knew whether she had a father or not. Don't tell me you're being kept by someone? Seeing Lena's hesitation, Aunt Susan's thoughts went astray. No, no. Lena quickly waved her hand and peeked at Tang En with a blushing face. Lena's expression was caught by Aunt Susan. She was more determined to guess. Lena, I don't want to criticize you. You finally got out of the mud. Besides, even if you are looking for someone to keep you, you should find a younger one. Tang En was leaning against the side of the carriage at this time. He didn't seem to pay attention to this side. However, the other side of his mouth was twitching. It's really not. Okay, Aunt Susan, I know about that matter. I'll go and find you tomorrow. While speaking, Suli was still talking. As she said this, Lena pushed Aunt Susan away. You child. Be careful not to be cheated. Aunt Susan looked back and said as she walked with a face of unwillingness. I know. Goodbye, Aunt Susan. Lena pushed Aunt Susan away with difficulty and returned to Tang En with a red face. What's wrong? What was that just now? Tang En asked calmly. Nothing. That was Aunt Susan, my neighbor. Lena breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, then go in to buy things? And let's go. Lena walked behind, looked at Tang En's back and tilted her head. Tang En was really a layman when it came to alchemy. He was only responsible for paying. He remembered the first time he came. Lena felt very guilty after knowing the expensive price of alchemy materials. She swore that she would make a good washing machine and then sell it to Tang En in return. Tang En naturally nodded as if it was a matter of fact, but he didn't care in his heart. After all, he had spent a lot of money. These alchemy materials were just a small amount of money. After moving some things such as teeth, beef tendons, and so on into the carriage, Tang En was ready to drive back. At this moment, Tang En suddenly turned his head to the street corner. Why did the figure just now look a little familiar? Frowning and carefully looking around, Tang En saw a few burly men in casual clothes walking towards the street corner at the same time. Lena, I'm sorry. I suddenly have something to do. Why don't you drive back first? Okay. Lena was stunned, then immediately agreed and took the reins. Arthur. Be careful. Don't worry. Tang En waved and quickly disappeared into the crowd. Chapter 75. This was the busiest commercial street in the West District. Even though Liyan City was not very peaceful, there were still many people coming and going. There were alchemy shops, magic shops, clothing shops and so on both sides of the street. On the south side of the commercial street, a nobleman wearing a purple cloak was walking slowly. He would enter some shops from time to time. Perhaps he did not find anything worth buying. After entering more than 10 shops, he still did not find anything. When he passed by a clothing shop with good business, the nobleman walked in again. However, this time, he took a long time. After about 15 minutes, he still did not come out. At this moment, a few strong men walked in. Why is this purple cloak here? Gentlemen, you want to buy this? You are in luck. A customer thought this purple cloak was too bright and changed it. The men looked at each other. Which one did he change to? When did he leave? Black. Just now. Don't be in a hurry to leave. If you are not satisfied with the purple, we have other colors. The men rushed out of the shop. The street was bustling with activity. The nobleman was long gone. At the crossroad opposite the clothing shop, a nobleman looked away and straightened the collar of his black cloak. You want to follow me, thief? Go back and practice for another 7 or 8 years. After saying that, the nobleman hummed a tune and walked into the street. He seemed to be very familiar with this place. He turned left and right and walked past many streets and alleys. Just as he walked to the middle of an alley, a middle-aged man in green clothes suddenly appeared from the alley in front of him. He had his hands behind his back and a sword at his waist. Then, a group of men with unfriendly faces and large axes on their backs appeared behind the man. The nobleman's expression changed, and he turned around. Before he could take a few steps, he saw dozens of men with the same murderous aura walk in from the alley behind him. The nobleman laughed dryly. "Why are you stopping me?" The man in green snorted. "Still pretending? Thief Jack, you think you can fool us with your lousy camouflage? Please." Jack smiled and spread his hands. "My camouflage is not bad. You guys chased me for 3 days before you caught me. Humph. I hope you'll still be in such a good mood when you're caught. How dare you steal from the Aston family? You sure have guts. How many times do you want me to repeat myself?" Jack said helplessly. "It was stolen by a man called Yet. He has triangular eyes, a hooked nose, and protruding ears. It's easy to recognize him. Go and find him. I'm just a lookout. The thing really isn't with me." "He's really not here? More real than real gold." "If that's the case." The green-robed man waved his hand. "Then there's no need for you to live. Kill him." Whoosh! A snow-white axe was raised. The ferocious man licked his lips. Chee chee chee! Suddenly, a black smoke expanded rapidly. In an instant, it covered an area of 3 feet. "Where did he go?" "Here." "Damn it, who's chopping me?" "You're blind." In the black smoke, the men couldn't see anything. Instantly, they were in a mess. At this time, there was a voice that kept reminding them of the location. "Here. I caught him. Everyone, chop him." Clang, clang, clang. The sound of axes chopping on armor could be heard. Naturally, it was followed by a wave of curses. After a few accidental injuries, the men could only guard in front of them. They no longer dared to chop with their axes. Looking at this scene, the man in green couldn't help but frown. Guard both sides. Don't let him break through. Whoosh! Before he finished speaking, a figure shot out like an arrow and rushed toward the end of the alley. "Stay here." The man in green stepped forward. With a clang, the blue longsword on his back pierced toward Jack's back. Jack didn't even turn his head. He just threw out a crescent blade. Cheap trick. The man in green didn't stop. The blue light on his body surged. Wearing a blue armor, he crashed into the hidden weapon. Clang, clang, clang. The crescent blade that was knocked away kept spinning between the 2 walls. For a moment, stone fragments flew everywhere. It was almost blinding. At this time, the man in green had already arrived behind Jack and chopped down with his sword. Jack had no choice but to step to the side. His forward momentum was stopped. He was about to use the same trick and throw out the crystal bottle to escape. Tidal slash! Suddenly, the blue sword aura moved in a crisscross pattern. It was like a tidal wave, forcing Jack to keep dodging. The hidden weapon was crushed as soon as it was thrown. Jack couldn't help but groan inwardly. He was a little desperate. He was a thief. Of course, he had the ability. However, most of his skills were small tricks. His frontal attack wasn't strong. In such a narrow environment, wanting to force his way out of the man in green's sword aura was undoubtedly a fool's dream. At this time, Jack missed Arthur very much. That guy's abilities as a thief were terrible, but he definitely had the ability to attack. Just as Jack was about to lose if he continued to defend for a long time, a loud shout suddenly came from above. "Who is it?" Bowing to thank the book friend Archer_Eggy for the tip. Chapter 76. Who's there? This shout came from one of the 4 men on the wall. Originally, they were only responsible for sealing off the top of the alley. Now that Jack had broken through from below, they naturally had nothing to do. Thus, they were all watching the fight below. Unexpectedly, someone came up from behind them and quickly dealt with the 2 men on one side. If the man on the other side didn't feel the barbed wire in his hand loosen and quickly raised his head, he probably wouldn't have noticed this uninvited guest. When the barbed wire fell, the man in green below hurriedly raised his head. He saw a figure tumbling in the air. Suddenly, it split into three and transformed into three blood shadows. They flashed in front of him, as if they had shrunk the ground into an inch. Then, three blood-red lights appeared. The man in green was shocked. This attack was too fast and too fierce. It was as if the space between them didn't exist. Between the eyebrows, throat, and heart. Which attack was the real one? The man in green was also a decisive person. He didn't wait to raise his sword. The blue light in his left hand instinctively crossed over his left chest. Pooh! The red dagger pierced through his flesh and blood appeared. Although he had been stabbed, the azure-robed man laughed loudly. He made the right bet. The dagger that stabbed between his eyebrows and throat were all illusions. The real dagger had already pierced through his palm and into his chest. However, he wasn't worried. He knew this wasn't enough to kill him. Bang! Before the man in green could counterattack, he felt a pain in his lower abdomen. Then, he was kicked into the black smoke behind him. Go! The uninvited guest used the force of this kick to roll up again. Two screams came from above. Where do you think you're going? The man in green, whose body was covered in blue light, roared angrily. He instantly rushed out of the black smoke. Unexpectedly, a metallic light covered his eyes. Damn it! The middle-aged man in green and the burly man who just came out of the black smoke were trapped in the barbed wire. They could only watch as Jack climbed over the wall and left. Plop! The two burly men who had their barbed wire taken away fell from the wall. They grimaced in pain. Phew! The man in green stood still for a moment and let out a long breath. Damn it! He couldn't help but feel depressed. Just when he was about to succeed, it was suddenly ruined by a guy who came out of nowhere. What was even more depressing was that because the assassination had happened too quickly, he didn't even have time to see what the person who hurt him looked like. How am I going to explain this when I get back? On a small street a few blocks away from the alley, Jack caught up with his savior and said, "Brother, uncle, thank you for saving my life." "Your uncle?" The middle-aged man rolled his eyes. "Who are you calling your uncle?" Arthur?" Jack opened his mouth, and then patted Tang En on the shoulder in surprise. "Haha, I was wondering why you're still so good at fighting despite your old arms and legs. How can you make us young people feel?" This middle-aged man was Tang En, who had been following Jack all the way here. Originally, when he saw that Jack had shaken off his pursuers, he was about to show himself. However, he did not expect to find a group of people following him. Moreover, they had already set up an ambush, so he could only wait and be the Oriole. Tang En said angrily, "What's wrong with that group of people just now? How can a thief be ambushed by others? That's too embarrassing for your profession." "TSK, don't mention it." Jack slammed his palm gloomily. "It's the pirates from the Aston family." "The Aston family?" Tang En was shocked. He was involved in this matter, and even the account book was taken out by him. He didn't expect the victim's family to come to him so quickly. Jack said hatefully, "Isn't that so? They took the portrait of us in disguise and searched the entire city. Sigh, people are afraid of being famous, just like pigs are afraid of being fat. I'm a little famous in this profession, so they came to find me. Damn it, they've been chasing me for 3 days." "Portrait?" Tang En frowned. "Yeah, now that I think about it, it must have been the gray-clothed man who reported it. Damn it, he's not particular, getting rid of the donkey when it's no longer needed. Don't let me know who he is, or I'll let him have a taste of Uncle Jack's methods." Then what are you going to do now?" Jack blinked and showed a hint of fatigue. "I want to sleep now. Damn it, I haven't slept for 3 days and 3 nights. Ha, you deserve it. You got your retribution for being a thief." Tang En was puzzled after gloating over Jack's misfortune. "If you're sleepy, just find a hotel to sleep in." "Sir, if we're talking about retribution, it seems like you, the assassin, are the one who really deserves it." Jack rolled his eyes and said, Do you think I don't want to stay in a hotel? If I had your disguise skills, I would have gone in long ago. Why don't you teach me disguise skills? Dream on. Tang En naturally rejected him mercilessly. He then said, I didn't save you for nothing. I haven't asked you to thank me, and you're already reaching out to me. That's not interesting. Jack looked vigilant. We've been through thick and thin together, so it's only right to help. Don't tell me you're still thinking about my diamond? Let me tell you, I've already used up all my gold coins. Used up all your gold coins? Tang En was shocked. What did you do to be so wasteful? Please, I'm a thief who relies on tools. Do you think my half-moon blades, cracking devices, smoke crystal bottles, and so on don't cost money? I'm already in debt now, and I'm just waiting to sell my fighting spirit cultivation method. Well, don't talk about those useless things. I want to ask you to steal something. Can you help me? Oh, there's business to do. Jack suddenly became spirited. Well, since you and I are familiar with each other, I'll give you a 10% discount. Tang En's mouth twitched. This place is not far from the place just now. The man in green is not dead yet. If someone wants to get to know him again, I'm willing to help. I'm not familiar with them, so let's not get to know each other again. Jack laughed dryly. I just thought about it. It's too tacky to talk about money between brothers, and it hurts feelings. So this time I'm strongly willing to help you for free. Hee, that's good. Well, tell me, what is it? Where is it? Master Jack can't do anything else, but taking something is easy. Jack's face was full of confidence, as if he was the only one who could do it. It's some information. It's in Bose's office at the police station. What are you doing? Jack's legs went soft, and he almost knelt on the ground. He quickly grabbed Tang En's arm. Big brother, I was wrong. I'll kneel to you. You should send me back to the place just now. Tang En rolled his eyes speechlessly. It's just stealing something. Do you have to go so far? That's Bose. The Bose whose hands are stained with the blood of assassins and thieves. Don't talk about stealing from him. I usually avoid him when I see him on the road. In comparison, I'd rather steal the seal from the city lord's residence. Not going. I won't go even if you beat me to death. If that's the case, then I can only use a disguise item as a reward to ask other thieves to help. TSK, that's a disguise item that can fool Bose's eyes. Jack's body froze when he heard that, and his eyes kept rolling. Alright, I still have things to do. I'll take my leave first. Tang En cupped his hands and turned to leave. Of course, this turn was very slow. Wait. Jack's expression kept changing, and then he gritted his teeth. Damn it, I'll do it. Are you sure? Don't force yourself. I'm sure. It's just bow, Bose. Jack had a generous expression. If I succeed, my life will be worth it. Useless. Chapter 77. Although he had encouraged Jack, a professional thief, to join the plan to steal information, it wasn't something that could be done in a short time. Tang En put on a simple disguise for Jack and lent him some parts for disguise before sending him to the hotel to sleep. Tang En took a taxi to a nearby street and walked home. He noticed that Lena was standing on the stairs and looking around. She rubbed her hands together and breathed into her mouth from time to time. Whenever someone passed by the corner of the street, it would attract her attention. Tang En touched his nose, feeling slightly touched. He walked out from the corner of the street. Lena hesitated when she saw Tang En, then quickly walked up to him. Arthur! That's not necessary. It hasn't been long and you've already cast me, the landlord, aside. Tang En chuckled. No, it's just that your face seems to have changed. I was a good person and gave away some of my disguises. It's so cold, why are you standing outside? Tang En didn't want to talk about disguises, so he changed the topic. You don't think that I went to kill someone, do you? Lena lowered her head in embarrassment, obviously admitting to it. Tang touched his forehead. Sister, killing someone isn't like buying groceries. How can you kill someone on the street? I'm just worried. Lena felt wronged. Ha, what's there to worry about? I'm very powerful. Moreover, you can be the landlord if I die. Tang joked. I'll return the deed to you. Tang looked at Lena's slightly red eyes and serious face. He couldn't help but touch his nose again. The most embarrassing thing when you're joking is when someone takes it seriously. I'm joking. I apologize. Alright, let's go inside. The next day, the sky in Liyan City was still gloomy and depressing. However, the commoners were very happy because the chaos seemed to have subsided. There were only a few fights in the city in the morning. At this moment, a luxurious carriage drove out of Robert Castle, accompanied by dozens of spirited squires. Gray, what's the situation? Bevan pinched the bridge of his nose and leaned comfortably on the soft velvet cushion. Young Master Bevan, apart from some sporadic fights in Southport, most of them have been brought under control. Gray, who was sitting on the side, said excitedly. Hearing this, Bevan's spirits were lifted. Good. After the Iron Blood Association is disbanded, I'd like to see how the Black family will fight for the dock. Because of the Black family's sudden attack, Bevan hadn't had a good rest these days. It wasn't that he was worried. Instead, it was that he had to constantly control his various powers and techniques to neutralize his opponent's attacks, which consumed too much of his energy. Young Master Bevan, the Black family is powerless to reverse the situation. The current struggle is just a struggle at death's door. Yes. The assassin might have also known this, so he used the expensive magic-piercing arrow. But this magic-piercing arrow was not powerful enough. It paused for a moment when it penetrated the magic barrier, giving Bevan a chance to react. He narrowly dodged to the side. It's the Black family. With a gloomy face, Gray's first thought was of the Black family that they were currently on bad terms with. Bevan said noncommittally, "It's possible." After a while, the cavalry that had rushed out just now returned. Gray got out of the carriage for a moment, then returned to the carriage and said, "We didn't catch him. The assassin left after shooting. It should be just a test." Bevan was not surprised by this result. He nodded and said, "Let's continue forward." After a pause, the carriage continued forward. But at this time, the cavalry's defense was clearly much more concentrated. At least 4 cavalrymen controlled their horses and walked beside the carriage window. Before they could take a few steps forward, a rapid clatter came from the front. A cavalryman with a golden lion head on his armor was rushing towards them. 2 cavalrymen quickly went to support him. After a while, one of them came back and handed a scroll to Gray. Gray opened it and his face changed. "Young Master Bevan, Viscount Thomas family has declared war on the Delco family." Thomas family? Bevan was surprised. Did the aristocratic alliance attack them? "No, young master." "Did they say the reason?" "No, it just happened," Yizichin said. Clatter, at this time, another cavalryman rushed over and handed over a scroll. "Ambrose family has declared war on the aristocratic alliance." "Walter family has declared war on the aristocratic alliance." The clatter of horse hooves continued. After a while, more than 10 families had declared war on the aristocratic alliance, including the Robert family. At this time, Bevan's face was no longer calm. What happened? How was this possible? Was it done by the Black family? No, it was impossible. Aristocratic families were all fence-sitters. It was impossible for them to not see the situation back then and stand on the side that was destined to lose. Besides, the Black family could not even protect themselves. How could they attract the other nobles with the benefits of the docks? "Young Master Bevan, I know the reason." Gray ran over with sweat all over his forehead. "Speak." "Not long ago, The Delco family used the power of the aristocratic alliance to wipe out the Thomas family's gang and took over Pier 55. Pier 55? Bevan was stunned for a while and subconsciously asked a stupid question. Pier 55 among the 76 previous piers? Yes. Bang! The teacup that had just been replaced was once again crushed by the pale-faced Bevan. This pig! Bowing to thank his book friends Big Brother Bull, Chestnut Jam, and JHT 121 for their tips. Chapter 78. There was an unwritten rule in the circle of nobles: vested interests could not be violated. For example, before the 24 new docks were built in Lion City's Southport, there were already 76 docks. These 76 docks that had already been allocated were vested interests. Once these interests were infringed upon, it would be a battle to the death. Bevan's painstakingly managed aristocratic alliance grew stronger day by day. However, when he forcefully scattered the Flame Dragon Union and caused the Matthews family to give up on the idea of building a new dock, he had never thought of making a move on these docks. Bevan was very clear that although they were constantly fighting and killing, it was all within the framework of rules. Just as Count Robert said, Lion City could not be in chaos. However, the Delk family had violated this interest. He made a move on the Thomas family and took over their Dock 55. Could it be that Viscount Delk did not know about this rule? Of course not. He had only been blinded by his interests and resentment. The Thomas family and the Delk family had always been at odds. The two Viscounts would quarrel whenever they met. However, Viscount Thomas would always have the upper hand. This was because in the end, he would always ridicule the Delk family for being an inferior noble family without a peer. As time passed, Viscount Delk's resentment grew. Don't you have docks? Aren't you arrogant? Then I'll take yours. When the news of the docks being taken spread, it immediately caused a huge uproar. Although they had borrowed the power of the aristocratic alliance, this was really just the Delk family venting their anger. However, the other nobles clearly did not think so. They only thought that the aristocratic alliance was preparing to make a move on all the docks. How could they tolerate this? Thus, in a short period of time, more than 10 families quickly declared war on the aristocratic alliance. When Bevan changed his route and arrived at the Delk family's manor, almost all the nobles with docks had declared war. In the front hall of the Delk family, the 5 Viscounts were all present. Viscount Delk sat on the chair with a panicked expression. He was truly afraid. He did not expect such an intense reaction. As for the other Viscounts, some were sitting with ashen faces while others were walking around in panic. Viscount Delk, you... Sigh. These sighs were like heavy hammers that struck Viscount Delk's heart. At this moment, Bevan walked into the front hall with a calm expression. Such a long time was enough for him to adjust his mood. Viscount Dirk took a few steps forward and bowed deeply. Sir Bevan, I sigh. Bevan's mouth twitched, but he still helped Viscount Dirk up. Lord Viscount, don't blame yourself too much. Since this has happened, we should think of a way to deal with it. I'll listen to Sir Bevan's orders, Viscount Dirk immediately declared. Okay, first of all, you have to quickly contact the Thomas family and return Pier 55. A Viscount should be humble. Yes, I'll go now. There's no hurry. This is far from enough to resolve our current crisis. Next, you have to use a new peer in exchange for Viscount Thomas's statement. Just say that you were instigated by the Black family and accidentally injured the other party. This is actually just a misunderstanding. Viscount Dirk hesitated. Originally, according to the previous cooperation agreement, if the aristocratic alliance was successful, these Viscount families would be given 2 or 3 docks. Now that he had to give up one, he couldn't help but feel heartache. Bevan's eyes flashed as he said in a warm voice, Sir Viscount doesn't need to worry, this dock will be provided by the Robert family. How could I accept this? I was the one who made the mistake, so this dock should be provided by me. Viscount Dirk said slowly. He, sir, no need to be so polite. Now that time is tight, you should hurry and leave. Okay. Then I'll go now. Viscount Dirk cupped his hands and quickly left. Bevan looked at Viscount Dirk's back and narrowed his eyes. This was truly a pig-like teammate. Bevan calmed himself down and cupped his hands towards the surroundings. Lord Viscounts, the situation is urgent. Please continue to follow our previous arrangements and increase the intensity of the attack. Okay, Sir Bevan, don't worry. We'll personally go and supervise. The Viscounts also cupped their hands and hurriedly left. Phew! After arranging all the matters, Bevan let out a long breath and turned around to leave the Dirk Manor and get on the carriage. Young Master Bevan, the Golden Lion Gang is already fully focused on the Iron Blood Association's base. They should be able to completely destroy it in an hour. Gray quickly said. An hour. Bevan didn't have any joy on his face. This is the fastest speed? Yes. Young Master Bevan, do you think that the Blake family still has a backup plan? Never overestimate the intelligence of your companions and never underestimate the ability of your opponents. Bevan suddenly sighed and then shook his head. Although we quickly responded, there are still many loopholes that can be exploited. If I were Earl Blake, this kind of opportunity. Sigh. It's all because of that stupid Viscount Dirk. Gray couldn't help but feel angry when he saw that the good situation had taken a turn for the worse. Stupid? Bevan smiled bitterly. Stupid isn't scary. What's scary is greedy stupidity. That guy was still worried about his peer just now. Gray opened his mouth in surprise. Could it be that the peer? Time is tight. I don't have time to talk nonsense with him. I'll pay for the peer. That pig! Don't insult a pig. Bevan waved his hand and then his face darkened. Ridiculous. He still wants the peer. I've never been stingy with sharing benefits with my partners, but I won't give anything to this kind of guy who drags me down and ruins my plans. In the attic, Tang En was munching on a rice ball without any taste. Because Lena had gone to Linha Street early in the morning to handle the demolition procedures and hadn't returned yet, he could only eat the leftovers. What, I made it. What a joke. I shouldn't waste those materials. Tang En had already been spoiled by Lena. How could he eat the junk food he made? Walala, Tang En looked at the gloomy sky in surprise. Setting up a wooden ladder, Tang En took the rice ball and climbed up the wall. Bess, with his hair disheveled and a strong artistic temperament, was holding a brush and concentrating on drawing something. Hi. The bored Tang En took the initiative to greet him. Bess didn't respond. It was as if he was completely immersed in the world of art. Yo, ignoring me. You were so enthusiastic last time. Tang En persevered. Good afternoon. Have you eaten? I've eaten. Bess frowned and turned his head helplessly. Haha, I've eaten too. Bess exhaled. What's the matter? Nothing much. Well, the weather is bad today. Why are you drying your painting? Tang En began to find a topic. Yes. TSK. Tang En continued. You don't like to talk? I'm busy, Bess said concisely. You're quite like an assassin. Tang En came to a shocking conclusion. Bess raised his head and put down the brush. Mutes don't like to talk, but not all mutes are assassins. That makes sense. Tang En's ears moved slightly. He turned his head and saw Lena opening the back door and preparing to tie the horse's reins to a wooden stake. Haha, I'll leave first. I'll talk to you next time. Bess rolled his eyes and simply turned his head away, ignoring him. Lena saw Tang En climbing up the wall and asked in surprise, Mr. Arthur, it's nothing. I'm just connecting with the neighbors. You're finally back. Well, you must be hungry. Lena turned her head and smiled. Tang En burped and speechlessly raised the rice ball in his hand. I'm full. Have you settled the matter? No. Lena frowned and said angrily, some strangers came and only gave us 1 gold coin to move away. Everyone disagreed and they even wanted to use force. Tangan was stunned for a moment and then said angrily, forceful demolition? What happened next? A noble lady happened to pass by. With her there, those people didn't dare to do anything and left while cursing. Tangan was surprised. A noble lady? Yes. Lena nodded and then tilted her head. That noble lady has a good temperament and a good person. She said she would go again tomorrow, and that she would keep an eye on this matter. By the way, her name is Josiah. Josiah. At this time, the Black family issued another announcement, saying that this was just a delaying tactic by the aristocratic alliance. In fact, the Hermann family's pier had already been attacked. Then, Viscount Hermann appeared and confirmed the news with a pained expression. He also scolded the aristocratic alliance. The aristocrat alliance reacted quickly. They immediately issued a notice, accusing the Black family and the Hermann family of colluding to create rumors. All kinds of news, both true and false, spread all over the place. The surrounding nobles were completely stunned. Some joined the battle, some watched, some took the opportunity to take revenge, some were directly implicated. In this afternoon, at least 1/3 of the nobles in Lion City were involved. As time passed, this percentage continued to increase. At this time, the nobles had already shed all pretense of cordiality. Other than sending out their own gangs, the nobles' private guards also joined the battle. The entire Lion City fell into chaos. Although the guards were exhausted from running around and stopping one fight after another, more fights broke out all over the city. The situation was close to getting out of control. At this time, in the Robert family castle, Bevan's study room, Gray hurriedly pushed open the door and entered. Bevan, who was standing by the window, suddenly turned his head. Looking at Bevan's eagle-like eyes, Gray lowered his head. Young Master Bevan, the Iron Blood Association didn't manage to take it down. A few of the mid-tier gangs from the Alliance have rushed over. Bevan's eyes gradually dimmed, showing signs of fatigue. We failed at the last step. Gray saw Bevan's rare dejection and his heart ached. Young Master Bevan waved his hand and straightened his back. The current situation is expected. Earl Blake isn't an idiot. And give me a few suggestions. The key now is the Blake family leading the charge. We can try to gather all our forces and attack the Iron Blood Association once again. As long as we succeed, those fence-sitters will definitely hesitate and change side. Bevan immediately shook his head. No, the risk is too big. We've already lost our best chance. We're not gamblers. We need to stabilize our footing and see the situation clearly. Gray's eyes flashed with a dangerous light. The second is to kill them. Send the family's death warriors or hire an assassin to assassinate the Iron Blood Association's president and Earl Blake. As long as these two people die, we can achieve the same result. The success rate is too low. But we can try. If Ghostface makes a move, our chances will be higher. It's a pity we can't contact him. What else? Gray seemed to hesitate. Bevan looked at him doubtfully and said, What do you want to say? Gray gritted his teeth. The reason we haven't taken down the Iron Blood Association is that their strength is increasing, and our strength is not strong enough. If the family releases the restrictions on you and allows you to control all the power of the Golden Lion Gang, we can definitely take down the Iron Blood Association. What's the point of saying all this? Bevan frowned. With the opposition of the elders in the family, how can I control all the power of the Golden Lion Gang? The elders in the family are against it because of the eldest son's succession system, and you are the second son. Yes, because I'm the second son, Bevan thought of something and suddenly raised his head, staring at Gray. Gray and Bevan looked at each other for a moment, then Gray slowly said, If the eldest son dies, then the second son will be the first to inherit the family's power. Impudent. After a moment of silence, Bevan roared and punched Gray's cheek. Bang! Blood sprayed out, and Gray crashed into the wall and fell. Gray silently wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and knelt on the ground without saying a word. You. Bevan's face was ashen, and he pointed a trembling finger at Gray. Get out! Gray calmly said, Young master, this is the fastest and easiest way. Get out! The roar reverberated in the study. The beams of the room shook, and the sound lingered in the air. Gray silently got up, bowed, and left the study, gently closing the door. Huff, 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 huff. As soon as the door closed, Bevan couldn't stop gasping for breath. He swallowed his saliva and reached out to unbutton his shirt. He had never felt that this button was so tight. He tried a few times, but to no avail. Roar! Bevan roared again, grabbing the front of his shirt with both hands. The shirt was torn open, and his strong body was exposed to the cold air. Taking a few steps back, Bevan slumped into a chair. Was Gray wrong? If it was only about this matter, he wasn't wrong, very right. Bevan was very clear about this. After understanding Gray's meaning, although Bevan didn't want to admit it, at that moment, he was a little tempted. What followed was endless disgust. When he punched Gray, it was more like he was trying to hide something. This is the fastest and simplest way. Gray's words echoed in Bevan's ears like a magic spell. Bending over, covering his face. Was he really going to kill his brother? P.S. 2 things. 1. Raccoon Cat cupped his paws and thanked Shuyu for Death of the Demon God, and JHT 121 for his tip. 2. Recommended friend book, Urban. Book ID equals 255-8843, book name equals Dream of the 7th and 8th. Chapter 80. The first rays of the morning sun peeked out from the horizon, and the morning fog gradually dispersed in the cool breeze. Liyan City was very quiet at this moment. The people walking through the thin fog subconsciously lightened their footsteps, as if they were afraid of waking something up. Most of the people walking quickly on the streets were civilians carrying food basket. Even if they met someone they knew, they would just nod and exchange a complicated look before hurrying back home. Ta-ta on the main road, a noble carriage with a Chinese redbud flower emblem was moving at a constant speed towards the South Port. Soon, the carriage stopped at a place called Linha Street. 2 women and a man alighted from the carriage. From their attire, we could tell that the 3 of them were nobles. The one in front was the familiar Josiah. Josiah, this is the place you rushed to this morning? The noble young man looked at the filthy surroundings and frowned. Yes. Josiah, who was gentle with a hint of heroic spirit, replied casually. But this is the slums. What are we doing here? Another woman wearing a long dress said unhappily. Because it had been raining for the past few days and it had been gloomy these days, the potholes on the street had accumulated a lot of water. This kind of environment was undoubtedly hated by the well-dressed woman, because it would ruin her beloved dress. Josiah said helplessly, I didn't ask you to come. You wanted to follow me. Josiah exclaimed as if he saw something. He suddenly walked forward quickly. The 2 nobles looked at each other helplessly and followed him. The man was better off. The woman could only lift her dress carefully and walk step by step until she found a place. It felt like she was sweeping a mine. At this moment, a half-collapsed house appeared in front of them. A group of commoners wearing coarse clothes gathered together and groans could be heard from time to time. Give me a bandage. Don't you have one? Then give me a piece of white cloth first. Also, give me a basin of clean water. Here, this is money. Little John, can you help me buy some medicine and bandages from the treatment center? A slightly anxious female voice came from the crowd. She seemed to be a doctor. What happened? Joshua asked as he moved closer to her. Miss Josiah? The woman was about to get up to wash the towel when she raised her head and saw Josiah. "You are Lena?" Magicians generally had good memories. Josiah quickly remembered the woman he had met yesterday. "Yes." What's wrong here?" Josiah asked in surprise. Josiah's face turned red. "If they dare, I'll go find them now." "It's useless," Aunt Susan said dejectedly. "They said it was the decision of the city government." "Nonsense," Josiah said angrily. "I went back last night to check. The city government clearly stipulated that the compensation for the demolition fee is based on the area." So what?" "We can't beat them." "That's right. If they attack again, we won't be able to keep our lives." Sigh. The crowd around them shook their heads in frustration. Josiah was anxious and angry. "We want to complain." Why are you pulling me?" The noble man and woman pulled Joshua to the side and whispered to each other. "Josiah, you're not really going to help these poor people, are you?" "Why not?" Josiah quickly asked. This kind of thing is very troublesome. You know the chaos caused by the construction of the wharf recently," Josiah said angrily. "So what? They can fight for the wharf, but they can't not even pay the demolition fee for these civilians. If you drive them away like this, where do you want them to live?" "That's right, but they're just poor people. If you help them like this," Josiah frowned and stared at the two people in front of him. "Is this what you want to say?" Thank you for your kindness." Josiah pursed his lips and said firmly. "They're right about this. Since they're right, I'll definitely help." After saying this, Josiah turned and left, standing in the middle of the crowd. The young girl's spirit eyes looked at the civilians, and the restless crowd quieted down. She bowed and said, "Hello everyone, I'm Josiah. The Brand Kingdom's laws state that civilians should have the right to be free from hunger, cold, and persecution. When this right is violated, the nobles have the obligation to help them. I come from a noble family, and I'm willing to help you." The surrounding civilians completely quieted down and looked at the young girl, who was slightly nervous because it was the first time she spoke in front of so many people. "I didn't experience what you just experienced, but I understand how you feel now. Your rights have been violated. If you can't complain about this violation, then it will never be resolved. We're right, so we have to shout it out and tell those who want to violate us. I'm going to the mayor's office to complain. I don't know if I can succeed this time, but I want to try. I'm Chloe Josiah, a beginner water mage. Is there anyone who wants to try with me?" Looking at Josiah's expectant eyes, the crowd lowered their heads in silence. Josiah's eyes dimmed and he bit his lips. "I'm willing to go." A girl stood up and walked to Josiah's side. "I'm Lena, I used to be a nightingale, and now, I'm working on washing machines. Well, I'm half an alchemist. I'm willing to go." "I'm willing to go." A young child's voice sounded. "I'm John Jr., if Sister Lena goes, I'll go." In the middle of the crowd stood two women and a child. "Damn, I'm willing to go. F***ck your mother, count me in." As if a barrel of gunpowder that had been sealed for a long time was ignited, the crowd boiled. At first glance, there were faces full of excitement, fear, anger, and other complicated expressions. An indescribable atmosphere filled the air, and the two nobles on the outside couldn't help but take a few steps back. This group of people, were they crazy? After a while, the crowd carrying a few stretchers gathered. Under the lead of the two women and a child, they started to walk towards the mayor's residence in the middle of the city. "We want the demolition fee. We want to appeal." Under the shocked gazes of the people on both sides of the street, the miscellaneous slogans became louder and louder. It was as if they were declaring that they had nothing, only shouting. Lion City seemed to have been awakened by the continuous shouting. The chaos continued, and the endless fighting on the streets resumed. When this group of people who were shouting passed by, both sides of the chaotic battle couldn't help but stop. At first, they were surprised and found it funny. However, when these people fearlessly walked over, both sides couldn't help but make way for them. It was unknown who took the lead. "We want the demolition fee. We want the demolition fee." The slogans gradually became unified, and the momentum became louder and louder. It was as if they wanted to disperse the early morning mist, and also as if they wanted to completely awaken the city. Chidian website welcomes readers to read. The latest, fastest, and most popular serial works are all at Chidian Originals. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.